I think we're all here, Sean.
The live stream has begun.
I want to welcome everyone to the Los Angeles County Sheriff Civilian Oversight Commission meeting virtually. We have a full agenda, so I think probably it would be best for us to dive in as more attendees join us. We currently have about 35 people who are waiting. So I'm going to begin with a very happy announcement that this commission has some new blood to help us meet our mission. We have two new community appointee commissioners, and I want to introduce both of them to our audience. So we have Irma Cooper. She was a colonel in the U.S. Army Reserve and received the Bronze Star as a Army Corps nurse who held 3 commands, including one in Iraq. And Irma, I want to give you a big welcome. Those of us on the committee were thrilled when you were appointed. And would you like to make any remarks?
Yes, good morning. And thank you for that warm welcome. I am very humbled and honored to have an opportunity to serve with you on this commission. It is very important to me that we have a positive working relationship with the people who have devoted their lives to protecting and serving us. And it's important for the citizens to feel that they are safe and can feel safe calling law enforcement. And it's also important for the law enforcement officers to know that they have our support. So it is important to work to close that gap. So I am ready to go to work with my colleagues to help just decrease that gap and improve our relationships. Thank you.
Thank you, Irma. We also have Dr. Luis Garcia. Dr. Garcia is a senior program manager at Advocates for Human Potential, a behavioral health consulting firm. He's also a registered clinical social worker providing psychotherapy to people. His 20-year plus career spans multiple sectors, and he holds a steadfast commitment to addressing societal issues through a person-centered approach, including behavioral health access and the complex clinical needs of justice-involved people. Luis, would you like to make some remarks?
Sure. Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Chair Kennedy. I'm honored to be a part of this commission. As a clinician, therapist, I look forward to contributing to the very necessary and important work of the commission. As a resident of LA County, I do echo the sentiments that Commissioner Irma shared, and I do believe that residents do want to feel safe, and hardworking men and women of the department as well. So again, I'm excited to be here, and look forward to doing this important work. Thank you.
Luis, we really welcome and appreciate your mental health expertise on this commission. So we are almost at full capacity. We're just waiting for the appointment of a commissioner from District 1, which we hope will happen soon, and then we'll be fully staffed. Ingrid, I guess it's time for us to call the roll.
Certainly. Commissioner Bonner? I see you, Commissioner Monter. Commissioner Cooper,
Present.
Commissioner Garcia,
Present.
Commissioner Giggins,
Here.
Commissioner Harris,
Present.
Commissioner Hicks,
Present.
Chair Kennedy,
Here.
and Commissioner Rubin.
Present.
And Bonner is here. Bonner is here. I was having a problem unmuting. Present.
Thank you.
We have everyone here. Rob, I'm glad that you were able to fix the mute issue. I think we just have to post our reminders about public comment. Public comment is a huge part of our meeting. Just want to remind everyone that to join the WebEx, visit coclacounty.gov and click on the link to register and join the meeting. Here's our rules. We really appreciate it if you keep public comment on the agenda item subject, because at the end, whatever you want to say, you're going to get in, but it just makes it more meaningful if we're on topic. And here's our code of conduct. We have frank, hard-hitting conversations at this commission, but we try to be respectful of each other. And I hope we'll all allow each other to express our ideas in a professional manner. Okay, we're going to move on to approval of the consent calendar. We need to approve the April 21st meeting minutes.
Move
Leo.
approval.
Yes, move to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
Sounds like, is there any objection? Hearing none, the meeting minutes from April 21st, 2022 are approved. And we now begin one of the most important parts of our meeting, the family impact remarks. We had requests from several people. I approved two people because I tried to approve the people who had not spoken to us recently. And so our first speaker is from Jacqueline Venters, who wants to talk about her son, Tanel Billups, who was
I'm
shot.
sorry to interrupt, Chair Kennedy. Jacqueline has not logged on yet, but the next one is ready to go.
Okay, so we'll move on to Valerie Vargas, who is here to speak about her son, Anthony Vargas, who was fatally shot on August 12, 2018. Valerie, we really appreciate you being here and speaking about such a difficult subject and all of the experiences you've had. So I'm going to turn it over to you for 10 minutes.
Yes, hi, good morning. My sister Valerie was not able to make it. So this is Anthony's aunt. My name is Stephanie Luna. I'm the aunt of Anthony Vargas. Thank you guys for this opportunity to speak today. My nephew Anthony, as most of you know, was murdered in August of 2018 by two East LA Sheriff deputies seeking initiation into the deputy gang, the Banditos. What I'm here to talk about today is the implementation of the charter amendment and how crucial it is that we have this put into place. We have a current sheriff that has allowed deputy gangs to thrive with no consequence, has allowed the criminalization and displacement of our most vulnerable people. He's defied multiple subpoenas. He has allowed the harassment of grieving families by his deputies, which he himself participates in with my own family. He's actively takes part in cover-ups involving beatings within the county jail and has dared to target anyone who, seeks to expose their misconduct. Villanueva has publicly targeted my family along with the family of Paul Rea, including his minor sibling, in multiple press conferences. He has used our loved ones' murders to advance his own political agenda, stating that we are the only families that have come forth with these claims of harassment and disputing our claims of the existence of deputy gangs. Deputies regularly harass family members of those that they've killed. This commission has heard harassment stories not only from us, but from the families of Paul Rea, Ryan Twyman, John Horton, Marco Vasquez Jr., Jaylani Lovett, David Ordaz Jr., among so many others. In February of this year, Villanueva wrote a letter to the board challenging elected officials to identify deputy gang members. In this letter, not only did he criticize the Check the Sheriff Coalition, Supervisors Mitchell and Solis, he openly and publicly singled out my sister Valerie. Not only is this morally disturbing, it has opened a door for his supporters to dox, harass, and quite possibly harm our families. We understand that this is a clear attempt to punish and intimidate us for speaking out. It's also an attempt to send a message to other impacted family members that they should be afraid to speak out as well. We've seen him go after reporters who have exposed his misconduct and lies, holding press conferences and radio shows calling them out. The most recent case being when he announced that he was investigating an LA Times reporter after she reported on LASD's cover-up of a deputy kneeling on someone's head for 3 minutes. He backed off only when he was faced with a significant amount of criticism from the public. But what happens when things don't go public? If you weren't already aware, Villanueva has taken out he has put thousands of dollars behind paid Facebook ads targeting a private citizen, displaying his name and photo in 2 different languages. We love you, Richie. Alex Villanueva knows exactly what he's doing when he shows the name and faces of those he wants to silence. We understand that this is not just a Villanueva problem. We have former Sheriff Lee Baca and Tanaka in federal prison. Alex Villanueva's current careless and destructive leadership is the latest example of how the county's existing oversight system comes up short and demonstrates how they are powerless when a sheriff refuses to cooperate with county code. That's exactly why we're here today. We know how law enforcement can't be trusted to police themselves. This is a department with a budget of over $3.6 billion and acts lawlessly. You've heard families and community members come before the commission speaking about family harassment, the importance of the implementation of body cams, the need for a family assistance program, and now we're at a crucial point once again. LA County has reached a crisis point under its current sheriff, and it's time to take action. Villanueva and LASD are the single greatest threat to the lives and safety of Angelenos, especially Black and Brown community members. The Board of Supervisors, which is responsible for the health and safety of the public, including supervision of the sheriff, has not implemented policies and structures necessary to protect against the sheriff's abuse of power, including his misuse of county funds to pursue his personal political agenda, his secret police unit, and politically motivated investigations intended to solely intimidate and harass oversight officials. What I'm here today to do is I'm here to urge the commission to support the amendment to the county charter that will strengthen sheriff accountability and create a common sense structure of checks and balances once and for all. The CLC should recommend to the board that it will propose to the voters a charter amendment that will establish an impeachment process to allow the removal of the sheriff for serious misconduct, reinforce the board's policy-making authority over the sheriff's department, and establish permanent and independent civilian oversight. It's apparent that these issues go deeper than just one sheriff. And whether or not Alex gets reelected this year, we don't know what the next sheriff is fully and entirely capable of. That's why this charter amendment is extremely crucial, that we get to the voters and let them decide which way this is going to go. No sheriff is above the law, and it's time for us to start holding them accountable. I appreciate the time that this commission has given me to speak, and I also appreciate the fact that this has been put on the agenda. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Miss Luna, for sharing your experiences and your recommendations for the future. We're going to talk about the charter amendment later on in our agenda. Jennifer, I just want to ask, is our other family speaker?
She is not on.
Okay, so we'll move on to our committee, our reports, and then we'll go into our big discussion items. The 2A is the chair's report. I don't have anything to report. I'm going to participate in some of the later sections. So the next agenda item is our executive director's report. Brian?
Thank you, Sean. Good morning, members of the commission and members of the public. A couple of things I wanted to highlight. We uploaded an original agenda by mistake that had the election and of chair and vice chair on the agenda. We changed that and took that off, but I did want to remind the commission, I'm not sure if you wanted to continue with this policy, that there was a decision made several years ago that during the month of May, those who had an interest in running for either the chair or vice chair position would indicate so, and then we do those nominations in elections in June and in July. So just wanted to put that on your plate as to which direction the commission might want to go. Of course, we can just wait until June as well, but wanted to put that on your plate as some history of the commission, especially for those new commissioners who are here. Secondly, we've been working on, and we will continue to work on, a policy for going to in-person meetings. Some of the issues that we have to figure out in terms of in-person meetings, of course, are issues involving COVID, but also the locations for the meetings. In the past, we've had our meetings at Patriotic Hall, Metropolitan Water District, and at St. Anne's Catholic Church. We try to find a place that is close to public transportation, that doesn't charge a lot for parking for members of the public who want to attend, that isn't too far outside of the downtown area, because we will have guests from other departments who frequently will attend our meetings. And so we're still working on that. The commission ultimately has to make a decision as to when and if it wants to go full-time into in-person meetings. And so we'll look for some direction from the chair and from the commission as to when that possibility might arise. And finally, I just wanted to mention that either at our June or July meeting, depending upon the extent of our agenda, staff is going to come to you with some suggested changes in our ad hoc committee structure. We've had a number of ad hoc committees that have been in existence for the entire length of the commission. And as you know, those ad hoc committees are designed to be temporary for a single person. So we're going to be having a retreat in the upcoming weeks, and we'll put together what I think will be a pretty good program, both in terms of suggestions for committee, rather for commission priorities, but as well as a suggestion for ad hoc committees and how those ad hoc committees might look. So with that, I'll be happy to take any questions you may have, and I'll turn it back over to the chair.
Are there any questions? I don't see any. So why don't we move on to, Commissioner Giggins. Patty,
Yes,
go ahead.
Thank you. Brian, I just have a question. Is the cart before the horse or the horse before the cart? How do we make a determination to begin to meet in person if we don't have a place? Do we find the place first and then we make the decision, or how do we think about it when we don't have a home yet?
Yeah, I think perhaps we should just find a place first. We've had staff working on this issue, but a lot of the locations that we've looked at and that I've looked at personally are still concerned about COVID and aren't wanting to have large group meetings. So we'll come within the next month with some potential locations. We'll share that with the chair, have some discussions with the chair and the commission as to which direction we might go. I just wanted to put that on your plate ahead of time.
All right, thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, we're gonna see if our Inspector General has anything to report. Max?
It's Monte today.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. Just to introduce myself, my name is Mahdi Mohammed. I'm an Assistant Inspector General at the OIG. And I'd like to just thank the Commission for giving me the opportunity to speak. I have a couple things that I'll just touch on, but it'll be pretty brief. So just to give the Commission an update, we'll be releasing our quarterly report pretty soon. It's going to CAR on June 8th. Additionally, we have a series of other reports that should be published pretty soon, touching on a range of different topics. As far as our investigation of deputy gangs, it's ongoing. We've issued multiple subpoenas, and we have a few others that will be going out soon as well. We also have at least one person who's agreed to meet with us and come in and speak. So we're making progress. And additionally, we'll continue to assist the COC's investigation into deputy gangs as well. And lastly, just wanted to mention that the Office of Inspector General is in support of the motion to amend the county charter, which includes and makes permanent the commission as well as the Office of Inspector General, and supports oversight. But other than that, that's all I have. If you guys have any questions, I'm here to answer them. Thank you.
Marty, we have lots of questions, it looks like. So we'll start with Commissioner Ruben. Lael, you want to start us off?
Sure, thank you, and thanks for joining us today, Mr. Mohammed. As you know, at the last COC meeting, Max Huntsman talked about the fact that he was going to be meeting with the sheriff under oath right after our meeting. And my understanding is whatever occurred is not public information, but I'd like you to say whatever you can about the length of his testimony, the fact that he did testify, and whatever else you can say about that.
Okay, he did testify. We had him under oath for about 90 minutes. I'm not at this time going to kind of get into the content of it, but he did appear. He was with counsel, and it was a somewhat productive testimony. As far as the actual content of it, I'll leave that to Max's determination about when or how we're going to release what was said.
And just a quick follow-up, is there an intention to call him again under oath, if you know?
Yes, so we've issued multiple subpoenas specifically to him, as well as other members of his command staff. So it is our intention that he will have to show up again and speak with us on there's a range of topics.
All right, thanks very much for that. I appreciate that.
Commissioner Bonner?
Yes, I'm wondering, you mentioned that the Inspector General is conducting an investigation into deputy gangs and cliques. Are you, and to what extent are you coordinating that investigation with this commission, the Oversight Commission's investigation through special counsel of deputy gangs, cliques, and exclusionary subgroups?
So our investigation is running parallel, and we do coordinate with the COC's investigation as well, but ours is moving independently of theirs. And so I anticipate there will be some sharing of information, but at this moment, we're keeping them separate.
All right, thank you.
Does anyone else have a question? I just have one question. It's been widely reported that there is a list of named deputy gang members that exists. Does the Inspector General's office have that list? And if so, will it ever be shared with members of the public?
I need a little more information, Commissioner Kennedy. When you say it was widely reported that there's a list, are you talking about the list that the LA Times mentioned about the 41 named gang members, or is there a separate list?
No, that's it. Although I think a lot of papers have talked about it since that time.
We'll have to work with county council just to determine if that list can be provided, and because I know some of that information comes from confidential peace officer personnel files and internal affairs investigations, so I'm not sure at the moment what can and can't be shared, but we can definitely look into it and get back with you.
So there is a list?
We've compiled our own internal list, So yes, we have a list that was taken from the department's own investigations and also other sources. But like I said, we'll need to work with county council just to determine if we can share the names.
It would, you know, it would really help, I think, for the public to be privy to that information. So I look forward to your report after consulting with county council. Is there anyone else? Okay. Thank you so much. We appreciate it. And we're going to move on to commissioner comments. This is the time when we can hear ad hoc committee updates or other updates that any commissioner wants to talk about. So I'm going to open up the floor. Well, there's a long silence, so I'm going to take that.
Excuse me, Sean, is this where we're talking about our ad hoc committee reports or not? No.
Well, it's just on my list, but I know that you have to leave, Patty. So do you
Right.
want to give us a family assistance program update now? Because
Sure.
you're here and we can get it in before you have to leave if you'd like.
Yeah, sure. Thank you so much. You know, happy to do that. And I just want to give a big welcome to our new members. It's really really good to see so many squares on my Zoom screen that are filled with these beautiful faces. Yes, so the issue of the family assistance program continues to be somewhat fluid due to the fact that we did make a request, and it seems, and the board actually made a request for the CEO to find permanent funding. By way of a little bit of a background, we actually have, you know, several points and directives that we suggested to the board, including the funding aspect of the family assistance project. And just to remind everyone and also our new members that this was the first issue that came to this commission. The minute we convened, we took our, the minute we took our oaths to the Constitution and we were installed, the impact of deputy involved shootings on families in our community was one of the main topics. Almost every meeting that we had in the beginning, we were hearing testimony, we were hearing concerns, and we were hearing suggested remedies to help with the recovery and trauma that the families go through after they lose a member of their family through law enforcement interaction. And so this has been, our ad hoc committee has been working diligently for several years. And then the OIG made a recommendation that the family assistant program would be funded and have a home at the Department of Public Health at the Office of Violence Prevention, which is a fairly new part of the department. And it seemed like it made a lot of sense because the Office of Violence Prevention is very connected to community groups. So where we are now, and there are several things that in our suggestions, not only the partnership with the COC and the Office of Inspector General and the Sheriff and the Department of Mental Health and the medical examiner and coroner, but that we would make sure that these families got the counseling, some monetary assistance for burial, that the children in the families could also get counseling. And we have actually had some of that happen over the last couple of years, but now there is no more funding. And we are waiting for funding to happen. While we are waiting, we've had people come forward and ask for assistance, including to this group, including at, I think, our last meeting, we actually had someone come forward. I wish I could remember her name right now, but I remember very much her request and her testimony.
Miss Lovett.
Yes, Ms. Lovett and her need. So we're kind of at a standstill. The CEO, Chief Executive Officer, wrote a memorandum to the Board of Supervisors discussing this, as a matter of fact, on May 17th. So this is a recent, very recent communication. And it seems, and I think I'm just going to talk about the most important part, the way our ad hoc committee sees it, is that since the OIG recommended that the family assistance program sit at the Office of Violence Prevention, and the Office of Violence Prevention has funding, I think, for another year, while they're trying to make it permanent. Now we're kind of in limbo. The family assistance program is in limbo because they're tying the funding of the family assistance program to the permanent funding of the Office of Violence Prevention. So our concern is that while this process happens, and of course, we're hoping that there would be permanent funding for both. I think the COC, our ad hoc committee, was fine with the recommendation for it to go to the Office of Violence Prevention because it made a lot of sense. It was community-based. But now we're at a standstill in terms of how, if it's tied together and it's going to take a while to fund one, what do we do even in an interim to reach out and support the families that are in need right now? So that's the main thing that I wanted to bring up. I'm suggesting that perhaps our commission could write a letter. Maybe Brian could construct a letter with the help of our Chair Kennedy, and our staff, Ingrid Williams, who's worked very closely on this issue, is to ask for some type of either interim or a speeding up, because trauma does not wait for anybody, and trauma does not heal on its own. So we have families who have been traumatized. They're not getting the assistance that this body has promised and the board has agreed is necessary and actually has funded in the past. And unattended trauma doesn't go away. It embeds even further in the body of a person and the spirit of a person. And then it morphs. And then it morphs. It just continues and gets worse, and there's more suffering. So I'm just thinking, and with conversations with members and with our staff, if there is a way to encourage the board to either do an interim, and perhaps the OIG can help with that, while they come up with permanent, what about interim? So that's something that this ad hoc committee's been thinking about. So that's top of mind.
Lil, you have a question for Patty?
I do. Patty, that's, I know you and your ad hoc committee have really worked tirelessly on this, and it is such an important issue. And the fact that for whatever reason, the funding has been dragged along, it is more than overdue. I don't even like the idea of interim funding. While the board clearly indicated that they were going to support the family assistance program, I think we not only need a letter, but we need a very strong statement that they need funding now. I wouldn't even suggest interim, but this is something that the community feels strongly about, we feel strongly about, and you're right, we just can't wait. So I would urge that whatever letter is written be as strong as possible and not even suggest interim funding.
Yeah, yeah, and I understand that, and we're trying to be flexible because we know that there's the county has its processes to do what they need to do. But I will read from the recommendation that the CEO was unable to identify ongoing resources to fund the Office of Violence Prevention. Therefore, the CEO continues to focus on securing the ongoing funding needed to sustain OVP core operations, as well as sustaining the expansion of violence and trauma prevention activities as a prerequisite to identifying funding to establish a permanent family assistance program. So they want to do, I believe they want to do the permanent, but we're at a crossroads here. How long is that going to take? So that's why I mean, I think great minds could come together and solve this problem in the more immediate while they solve it in the long term. So that's just, you know, I don't want to tell them how to do their jobs, but to suggest that they need to think a little deeper and broader to deal with the issue at hand, and that there are people who need these services.
Anyone else? Well, Patty, I mean, I don't want to tell them how to do their jobs either, but the reality is the county finds money for things when it wants to. And it's just a shame that you and I have to hear that when we follow up with Miss Lovett, she's told by I think it was the Department of Mental Health Services that there are no funds available to help her financially in any way for her loss. And I don't know, Brian, if you have any ideas, but I do hear about emergency funding that comes about outside the ordinary channels. Is that not an option at all? There's nothing that we can do here?
Thank you, Chair Kennedy, and thank you for your report, Commissioner Giggins, as well. I'm going to ask Ingrid Williams, who has done work. Is she still on? Yeah, she's still on. Most of the work on this, to comment on this. I know she's aware of the funding potentials and as well as the office has requested. So Ingrid, if you can comment on this, there she is right there.
Yes. So in the original report back from the OIG, it was suggested, and also in the motion, that CEO find $100,000 in transitional funding between the time that DMH carried, not DMH, FAP went from DMH to OVP. So that was actually something that was already suggested, and it was something that we worked on in the report back. In the motion, the recent motion on April 19th, the board approved and asked, well, that's one of the directives, that the $100,000 be identified by the CEO. But as Patty mentioned, in the May 17th letter from the CEO to the board, they stated that there's actually, or they suggested that the Department of Public Health was allocated $20 million in American Rescue Plan 1 funding, which DPH should leverage, utilizing up to $100,000 as a bridge during the remainder of the fiscal year 2021 to 2022 to offset the cost of the burial assistance component of the FAP. So that was the suggestion. That was what the CEO identified. That's where the $100,000 should come from as far as DPH's budget. And so there was also, it's also suggested that perhaps CEO could come in and in the same way that they've explained body-worn cameras and the budgeting behind body-worn cameras, that perhaps maybe they can come in and explain how OVP and FAP's funding are interdependent on each other.
What do you think, Patty? Would that be helpful to have the county officials who exercise control over this issue come and report to us? Because it's just heartbreaking to tell these family members. I mean, I agree with Lil that it's hard to imagine a more worthwhile use of funds than to provide relief to the family of people who have been fatally shot by the sheriffs.
And we do know that it takes people a while to come forward when they're traumatized, especially under these circumstances. So it's a gap in the program. We now have a gap in the program. The program is stalled. And it, you know, it took a while to get it going. Department of Mental Health was responding, and now it's stalled. So yes, if indeed, it might be a good idea to invite the CEO to come in June to talk about this, and possibly accompany that with a letter urging, to talk about the urgency of this situation, whether it's permanent or interim, it has to be taken off the back burner.
Brian, let's keep the heat on. So why don't we work on a letter, and also let's invite the CEO office or any other appropriate county official to address this issue, because Patty is right. It was so hard to get this program started, and everyone seems to agree how important it is, not just on this commission. All the different county agencies agree, and yet it's not funded. What does it mean to establish a worthwhile program and then not fund it? So that's what I'd like to do if it's
Absolutely.
possible.
Absolutely. We'll put a letter together and we'll have this on the agenda for next month.
Perhaps it might be a time to also to hear from the Office of Violence Prevention and get their opinion on it also. Maybe have, I think it's Andrea Westling who's the head of that. Maybe we could have, let's focus on this, because this is a program that we were able to institute. We've done it before, so it needs to be recharged.
Great idea. That way, everyone responsible is in the same virtual room, if not real, and we can talk about it. Because otherwise, right, everyone just says, "Oh, someone else is responsible." Okay. Any other questions? I don't see any. Thank you so much, Ingrid. And we want to give the LA County Sheriff's Department the opportunity to give an update. I don't know that they're here. I hope
Mr.
they're
Chairman,
here.
before we get to that, we do have some public comment on Patty's report.
Okay, I didn't see that we were taking public comment at this time on my agenda. But if that's if that's the custom, I think it's great to hear from the public. So can we, I guess, let anyone who wants to comment on this? I think what I've done, I've taken it out of order, right, Brian?
A little bit.
So that's why I'm making an amateurish error. We are going to have public comment on the Family Assistance Program right now.
Excellent. So everyone who would like to make a comment, please raise your hand. If you have called in on the phone, please press *3. We have about 5 people in queue, and before we hear from them, we'll hear an announcement in Spanish.
Buenos días. Si desea que sus comentarios sean traducidos de español a inglés, por favor diga la palabra español antes de comenzar a hablar y alguien le dirá cómo proceder. Gracias.
Thank you. And we will begin with Tamra. As a special note for public commenters, once you have raised your hand, I will unmute you, and the system is updated now. So you will have to confirm that you will be unmuted. So Tamra, it looks like you've already done that. You have 2 minutes on the clock. Please go ahead.
Okay, thank you and good day. Appreciate the report. I was just gonna say, it's a real shame we even have to have this program, thinking about our loved ones killed out here. First of all, I should say power and strength to all the families impacted by sheriff violence. We stand with you in solidarity. It's a real shame we even have to have this program, that loved ones are being murdered out here at the hands of law enforcement that are here to supposedly protect and serve, but we know that's not their job. They adversely impact Black and Brown communities. But it's a necessary program. And what I was going to say is, the funding is not there. The voters, we voted for Measure J, right? And the BOS has had problems and pushback. The voters' voices matter, and we voted on mental health services, funding for these programs, right? I would urge this board, everyone on this board, to take part in the People's Budget LA. The People's Budget LA sets forth parameters of what the people need. Okay. And part of that is, taking funding from law enforcement that eats up 3.8 billion a year of our budget. All the money is going to law enforcement and militarization against the people. And everyone on this board should go to the People's Budget LA, do the survey, and urge everybody. You should all be pushing that before the election of June 7th. And think about Gina Viola, who is actually pushing for the people as mayor, and wonder why that she hasn't had a platform, and why professors like Dr. Abdullah are being forcefully removed from community forums at her own college by police. You know, they're standing up for, sorry, I ran out of time.
And next we will hear from Jacqueline Venters. Jacqueline, the request has been sent and it looks like you are unmuted. Please go ahead.
And thank you, Laura, for waking me this morning. But I wanted to share, you guys might be, I know you're familiar with my situation. My son is Tanel Billups. And thank God I have gotten his case all the way into the district attorney's office with the help of your agency and others. But I have been hired as a part-time ambassador for the city of Compton under a nonprofit organization called Crossroads. I am the trauma prevention ambassador, and I want to give my number because we have services for the trauma prevention that we offer right now to families that have been traumatized. And trauma just don't mean that your loved one was murdered. My number is 310-766-3515. Again, Jackie Venters, 310-766-3515. And I want you guys to use it right now. If anybody need it, is very valuable. I'm still dealing with the trauma from 11 years ago from my son being shot 5 times in the back. And we're still dealing with games that they're playing. Right now, they're saying the investigators said that they can't continue to investigate this deputy because they can't. His deputies had to tell that they seen him with a gun, which we know is not true. But I am in communication with George Gascon's office. I'm writing a letter right now as we speak to address that issue because some of the things that they're doing to us is wrong, and we got. Is still in the Lord, and we're going to get through this. And my prayers go out to all those families that have lost loved ones. But use the number, please.
Thank you. And next we will hear from Kevin Dalton. Kevin, a request has been sent. If you could just acknowledge to be unmuted. And please go ahead. You have 2 minutes.
Hi there, everyone. My name is Kevin Dalton. I'm actually a candidate for Board of Supervisors in District 1. I'd be curious to know roughly how many people are on the list or looking for funds after being, either murdered or attacked by LA sheriffs. I know there's a problem within the sheriffs, but I'm just curious as to exactly how many, roughly how many people are on that list. Certainly they should be getting assistance. But I think there's a bit of demonization going on with law enforcement. I think there's a big difference between officers who want to truly go out and help the community and people who are doing damage to the community. Those people are called criminals and should be treated as such. Any officer out there that is doing harm to the community should not be an officer anymore. And I think a lot more focus should be spent on that instead of just, casting dispersions across the board saying that all sheriffs are bad and law enforcement is bad. There is the vast majority of them out there who put their lives on the line every single day to make our community better. And they're typically the first phone call we make when we're in trouble, no matter how our feelings are about law enforcement. Again, my name is Kevin Dalton. I am a candidate for Board of Supervisors in District 1, running against Hilda Solis. If you'd like more information, you can certainly check me out at kevinforlosangeles.com. Have a wonderful morning, everybody.
Thank you. And next we will hear from Pastor Q. Pastor Q, if you could It looks like you're unmuted. Please go ahead.
I think this is disheartening, right? We just had a budget passed by the city council increasing funding for law enforcement more than we ever have. Now, I know people talk about making law enforcement the victims. We're not talking about a couple issues that have occurred. We're talking about a historical context of continued abuse from certain people from law enforcement agencies across the board and across the nation. For us to be fighting to get funding for families, this is something we should be doing. It reminds me of when Jesus comes in on Palm Sunday, which Americans love to celebrate. And he said to the leaders, he said, "You think you know the way of peace, but you don't, because it is blinded from you." And we're fighting tooth and nail to get support for families, which is the way of peace. But we are quick to send $40 billion to Ukraine for war, or quick to pass an unprecedented budget for law enforcement to respond to 2020, to respond to Black trauma. Today is Malcolm X's birthday. And I think Malcolm would be saying exactly what I'm saying right now. We have a system, we know that traumatizes people. The data is there. We read the data over and over again. Every time we do research, we read the data. Black and brown folks at the top of the list, but we never do anything to address it. We never do. And we're fighting to get family assistance as if it's a sidebar.
We'll hear from Rebecca Brown. Rebecca, please go ahead.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I just want to echo the urgency. I don't think I need to explain to the board. It sounds like you understand that, trauma does not wait. The sheriff's department continues to murder people. Just because something happened years ago, families are still impacted. Their whole lives are changed once the sheriff's department gets their hands on one of their loved ones and kills them. And so I just encourage you all to keep fighting, to look for every possible solution. We shouldn't even have to have a program like this in the first place. But here in LA County with deputy gangs, the department is just running so rampant and so violent. This is the very, very least that we can do to support families and try to help heal our communities. Thank you very much. I'll yield the rest of my time.
Thank you. And next is Carlos Montes. Carlos, if you could acknowledge, okay, please go ahead.
Volunteer organizer for Centro CSO Community Service Organization in Bow Heights. And I was going to speak on another item, but I was motivated to just say a few comments. As a volunteer organizer, I'm retired. I'm able to go out and visit families who have been victims of police killings. And I see the trauma and the anger and people crying, the mom, the dad, the brothers, sisters, the community. So we definitely need you to keep pushing for the family assistance program, for the burial assistance, for the counseling. I'm always challenged calling the Department of Mental Health, nonprofits do trauma counseling to get them appointments, to do intake, and then they break down, and so you all who do that kind of work know what trauma is about. And it just continues with the sheriffs, with the LA, we're working right now with the Edgar Ortiz family in Bellflower. Their son was killed by the Lakewood Police Department. And it's a big, beautiful family, but they're all traumatized. The mom, especially, the sister, the little kids, his children. So I just urge you to continue to advocate and fight for funding from a family assistance program. Thank you very much. I'll yield my time.
Thank you, Carlos. And next we will hear from Julie Martinez. Please go ahead.
Thank you for this opportunity to address the Commission on the Family Assistance Program. The Family Assistance Program is extremely important and needed because the Sheriff Department is killing people and letting people die in custody. Encounters with a sheriff deputy, whether on patrol or in one of our jails, should never be a violent encounter, or should it ever be a death sentence. I need to explain because my grandson was murdered on June 27th in 2019 by an East LA Bandino gang member. Families experience intense level of trauma. It is a family tragedy. I want to highlight that many of our community members are killed by local police. And in the case of my grandson, it was on a street that he grew up and walked to and lived very close. And actually, it was the street that he lived on where he was killed. And I want to explain that when these tragedies occur, the children and the family, parents, grandparents, the greater community experience trauma and need therapy. You also need to factor in that those families who speak out against sheriff violence and sheriff murders are targeted and harassed. So for an example, some of our family members were children when this tragedy occurred, and now they're young adults and teenagers, and they're still being harassed by the sheriff department. I know that you will work as hard as you possibly can to make sure that there is funding for this program. We, the community, and we families impacted by sheriff violence do need this therapy. And I ask you to continue to do everything within the power of your commission to secure funding for this program. It is an immediate need. Thank you.
Thank you. And the last person we have signed up for public comment at this time is Stephanie Luna. If you could acknowledge the unmute request, and please go ahead, Stephanie.
Yes, I'll echo what everybody's saying. You know, it's crazy because the county most definitely finds money when it's convenient for them, but not when it's for the families affected by sheriff violence. You know, Miss Lovett shouldn't have to be coming on here consistently giving testimony about the need for assistance. City Council just passed a budget that significantly increased the police budget. You know, yet here we are fighting for something that should be there automatically for impacted families. You know, families are coming on here fighting for their loved ones, fighting to get services, fighting to get help, paying funeral arrangements. There is no demonization of law enforcement happening. The deputies are doing that all on their own when they murder our loved ones and go on to harass grieving families. The sheriff's department continues to murder people, and it's going to continue murdering people. I, just want to say that I appreciate the commission fighting to get the necessary funding for the family assistance program. Thank you, guys. I yield the rest of my time.
Thank you. And we did have 3 more people who raised their hand. Andres, you have been unmuted. Please go ahead.
ACLU. Can you hear me?
Yes, we do.
Okay. Well, first of all, thank you for continuing to push this urgent and important issue. We do want to note that the report that the OIG wrote and the COC adopted the recommendations that it still falls short. The report estimated that about 50 families would need these services every year, and just in 2021 alone, 55 people died in custody, in addition to 11 people fatally shot, killed by sheriff deputies. So this is a universe of about 66 families a year, and there's no basis to estimate a lower number for 2022. So we've recommended to you all to adjust the budget to account for 70 burials and a flexible, services estimated at 5,000 per incident times 70. So about $150,000 in flexible funds for practical needs. And yet, these are crumbs that we're asking for, juxtaposed with the Sheriff's Department budget of $3.6 billion. And what we heard from Paul Reyes' grandmother, Julie, this morning, and other families, the tragedies that they go through, the trauma that they continue to live with. And on top of that, the systematic harassment by sheriff deputies on them, on the families, oftentimes by the same deputies who kill their loved ones. Yeah, this is not a problem of some bad apples. This entire department that is run.
Thank you. And next we will hear from Ricci. Please go ahead. Ricci, you are unmuted now. Would you like to make a public comment on this item?
Hello?
Yes, we hear you. Please go ahead.
Yes, yes, this is Richie Serdenko. I'm calling to support you all to continue to push for money for this program. You know, like it's been said, the county is able to find money for things that when they want to. And I know that the sheriff's department, you know, had a surplus last year. And so, you know, it should be possible to find this money for the families, especially considering, you know, the extent that deputies go. You know, not only do the LASD kill family members, but they harass and intimidate them, and Sheriff Villanueva will drag family members' names in the media. And imagine, you know, having this $3.6 billion occupying military force, and having the families have nothing on the other side. There's clearly an imbalance, and you know, I just wish that you all continue to push for this money, and you know, the county is able to find money when the sheriff's department want it. When they want to expand the host team, they were able to find money. And I also want to say that you know, the estimated families that will need this is much greater than 50. As Andres mentioned, there were 55 people that lost their lives in custody of LASD last year, on top of the 11 that were fatally shot by LASD. And this happens year in and year out. And so just want to urge, you know, more funding for this program.
And next we'll hear from Michelle Infante. Michelle, a request has been sent. If you could just acknowledge to be unmuted. Okay, and it looks like you are. Please go ahead, Michelle.
Good morning. My name is Michelle Infante. I'm with Dignity and Power Now. Last year alone in 2021, 32 people died in custody by LASD. Those were not accidents, and they were not, they were intentional. 22 young Black and brown men were shot and killed by LASD in our communities last year in 2021. Year after year, our organization and other organizations keep coming forward and talking about the young Black and brown men who are dying every year after year. It's not like we have 1 year where we have no one that's been killed. Every year, the numbers keep going up and up. These families are being tortured by LASD. I've been with the Vargas family and seen the sheriffs drive by over and over and over again, intimidating the family. I've seen and been with Jelani Lovett's mom, who's requesting documents. LASD withholds the documents and reports that by law are when proper request is given, it's the law that they should be given this. They're constantly being tortured, and $7,500 to bury a loved one is nothing. We're always finding money for all these different purposes, but when someone's loved one is killed and no one has anything to do with it, politics seems to stop the money. The money is there. Please go forward and look for that money and ask the county to find that money so these families can bury their loved ones and not have to be going to mental health services because of all the trauma that the county keeps giving them. The money is there. Please fight for the money for these families. They deserve it. They're trying to bury their families, not take $7,500 and go off and buy a new television set. Thank you.
Thank you. And the last public comment will come from Will Brown. Please go ahead, Will. Will Brown, you're unmuted. Please go ahead.
Yes, hello. I'm William Brown. I had a single thought, a single observation. The notion of where the funds should come for the family assistance program. As a member of the public, it seems to me strange that this would be a burden that should be placed on the county itself and on taxpayers ourselves when the sheriff's has caused trauma to families in LA County. If we think of any law enforcement organization anywhere, this is a response to law enforcement action. This is trauma caused by law enforcement. The funding for this should come from the law enforcement budget. It should stick and be an ongoing function of identifying the activities of the law enforcement organization that's causing trauma, and that organization itself should pay for the trauma. So it's just my thought as an outside member of the public. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And Chair Kennedy, that does conclude all of the public comments for the Family Assistance Program update.
Thank you. We will continue this important conversation next month with our friends from the various county agencies involved. We really appreciate the public comment. I'm going to go back to our ordinary agenda order. And as I said before, the next item 2E is any report from the LA County Sheriff's Department. We want to offer that opportunity to the sheriffs. I don't know that we have anyone here to give a report. Brian, maybe you know?
We do not, but we do invite either the sheriff or the undersheriff to every one of our meetings. So,
and I think the law actually requires the sheriff's participation, but sadly, once again, there is no participation. County council update or report is the next agenda item. Alex, do you want to give us any updates?
Thank you, Chair Kennedy. The only update I have at this time is related to the petition to enforce the commission's subpoenas for the sheriff's testimony at its September, October, and November meetings last year. The hearing on the petition has been scheduled for October 17th, 2022. So that's the update as to that litigation at this time.
So almost a year after the issue surfaces, the court's holding a hearing then.
That's correct. And unfortunately, the litigation does take quite some time.
And do you know, Alex, do we agree to that delay, or is that just the way it is?
We did not specifically agree to any delay. It's just the way in which the court has managed its calendar.
Okay, thank you. Well, that concludes our various reports. And so we'll move to agenda item number 3, which are our discussion on substantive issues. And the next issue is a really important issue that we hear about every time we meet. And I know all the commissioners are thinking about it a lot right now. And that is the issue of deputy gangs. The Board of Supervisors last September asked this commission to review the RAND study and the many other prior reports and recommendations regarding the long-standing problem of deputy gangs within the department, or whatever you want to call them. I don't want to get hung up on the nomenclature. And the board wanted us to report back with a tangible implementation plan for them to address this problem. And I'm going to turn it over to the chair of our ad hoc committee on deputy cliques or deputy gangs, Lael Rubin, to provide an update on the activities of the ad hoc committee and its Herculean efforts to take on this issue.
Thank you, Chair Kennedy. You're right. They are Herculean efforts, but we are determined that we are moving forward and hopefully get some important information and evidence on this issue. The ad hoc committee has been meeting regularly, more than once or twice recently, and we have been working with our special counsel, who next week on Tuesday, there will be a public hearing, and he has advised that he is going to present live testimony from several witnesses. This will be the first in LA County, hopefully not the last. And it is part of not only our responding to the request from the Board of Supervisors to come up with an implementation plan, but it will hopefully surface evidence, hard evidence, that will assist us in coming up with an implementation plan. So please look forward to announcements about the public meeting next Tuesday. And hopefully it will, as I said, be the beginning of substantial evidence that, that will be presented and available to the public. Thank you.
Thank you, Lael. Kind of extending on your comments, I want to now address the issue of subpoenas issued to witnesses who will testify at next Tuesday's public hearing on deputy gangs, which will begin, I think it's May 24th at 9 a.m. at Loyola Law School. And Commissioner Bonner, you head our ad hoc committee on subpoenas. So the issue of ratifying the subpoenas is before us. I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you, Chair Kennedy. Let me also, by the way, join in a welcome to our new commissioners, Commissioner Cooper and Commissioner Garcia. But let me give a brief report from the ad hoc committee regarding subpoenas and say a couple of things. First of all, we've considered and are considering a number of requests from the Commission's special counsel to investigate this matter for the issuance of subpoenas for the attendance of witnesses at the Commission's hearing next week on May 24th that you mentioned, Chair Kennedy. There are a number of witnesses and potential witnesses who have information relevant to this commission, the Oversight Commission's investigation into the current existence of deputy gangs, cliques, exclusionary subgroups within the Sheriff's Department. Based upon discussion and representation by our lead special counsel, Bert Deichsler, all of the witnesses or potential witnesses have testimony that is relevant to this commission's investigation. So I can report that much at this point. I will also say that at an appropriate time, and I don't think this is the appropriate time, we will present to the full commission for ratification all of the subpoenas that have been approved by the ad hoc committee regarding subpoenas and signed and issued by the chair of this commission. I particularly for our new commissioners, I'll just remind everybody, but particularly our new commissioners, that on motion adopted by the full commission at our last meeting, I think that was our April meeting, we approved a process by which the ad hoc committee regarding subpoenas could review and determine whether it's appropriate to issue subpoenas that would be signed by the chair, and that these subpoenas at an appropriate time would be submitted to the full commission for ratification. And that will be done, but there's nothing to present at this point. I'd also like to report on one other matter that's relevant to the work of the ad hoc committee, and that is there a letter was issued or sent by the special counsel to the commission Bert Deichsler to the sheriff, to Sheriff Villanueva, dated May 6, 2022, earlier this month, which asked the Sheriff Villanueva to personally and voluntarily appear and testify at the Commission's May 24th hearing regarding the existence, I'm quoting now, the existence, operation and impact of deputy gangs, cliques, or exclusionary subgroups within the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department, and also to advise us on how effective his policy has been in eradicating deputy gangs and exclusionary subgroups. So that letter was sent on May 6, 2022. We did receive a reply, not directly from the sheriff, but somebody on his behalf at the Sheriff's Department, dated, it's a letter dated May 16th, 2022, in which we were advised that the sheriff, and I'll quote, will not be able to attend the Commission's hearing on May 24th, 2022. Without objection, I would ask that both these, both those letters be part of the record of the hearing of this commission today. Other than, by the way, not identifying any witnesses or potential witnesses, I'd be happy to answer any questions that any other commissioner might have of me as the chair of the ad hoc committee regarding subpoenas. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Why don't we take questions of both Lil and Rob? And Lil, I see you have a question, so.
Just for point of clarification, in reviewing the minutes from our last meeting, the minutes indicated that any subpoenas issued would be ratified at the next meeting, would be today. I would like to know whether, Chair, that is your intention today, or as Commissioner Bonner suggested, doing the ratification at some other point in time.
Well, first of all, let me just, that's not what the motion stated, so I'd have to get the motion, but it did not say the next meeting. Since I wrote it, I'm pretty sure that's correct, but
the minutes
I think it's a moot point.
Well,
I think the minutes do say that. What I want to ask Rob is, obviously we don't want to reveal the witness's name at this time. There are many issues, but with your explanation that you've given us, can't we just ratify the subpoenas that you have issued for the hearing on the 24th right now without further like discussion of specifics, because we don't want to have any problems with those witnesses, obviously?
I'm certainly open to that, but again, it's not the minutes that control here. It's the motion that was approved by the commission. So I don't mean to rely on that. It's not a technicality. It's what we approved. So I don't know what the minutes said in terms of the discussion, but the motion did not require that ratification be made at the next meeting. It certainly left it to the discretion as to when that ratification would take place. And frankly, ratification doesn't really need to take place until such time as we've determined that we need to enforce a subpoena. But having said that, I'm open to, if the full commission wants to essentially ratify and I'm certainly not going to name names here, but there have been four subpoenas that have been authorized by the ad hoc committee regarding subpoenas that have been signed by the chair. And if we want to ratify without actually names, that's fine with me. If there's such a motion, I'd be happy to join in that motion. Thank you.
Yeah.
I'll make the motion.
Is there a second?
Chair, Commissioner Hicks had a question.
Yeah. Okay. This is where procedurally so do I need to do the second? And then, Jamon, I'm going to get to your question. Okay. So does anyone second Lael's motion?
I'll second it.
I'll second it.
Okay. There we go. Do we do that vote now?
I think we need public comment before we.
Okay. So we'll wait and
we
we'll
also
move.
might want some discussion. I know Commissioner Hicks has raised his
Okay.
hand.
we will put the issue of a vote off while we continue our discussion. Jamon, you've been waiting patiently for me. I greatly appreciate it. What do you want to say?
Thank you, Chair. It doesn't affect the vote, but Commissioner Bonner, what will be the format for the hearing on Tuesday? Obviously, I know we can't discuss who the witnesses are, but just what's the format so the public kind of understands how we'll go about it?
I think the way to view this, Commissioner Hicks, is it's something like a congressional committee. The format, we have counsel for our commission. That's the lead special counsel is Bert Deichsler, but there are approximately 20 other pro bono counsel that are part of the special counsel that are assisting the commission in the investigation of deputy gangs and subgroups. And so we anticipate the witnesses will be called. Some of them will be called in person at the hearing, and the special counsel will lead the questioning of the witness. After the special counsel concludes that questioning, each of the commissioners will have an opportunity to put questions to the witness. Some of the witnesses may appear virtually rather than in person. I don't know that that's been quite determined yet, in which case it will still be the same procedure. Our special counsel will lead the questioning as they're assisting us in this investigation. And then commissioners will have an opportunity to ask questions. Before we conclude, as with all public hearings of the Oversight Commission, there'll be an opportunity for the public to comment, not ask questions of witnesses, but to comment on the proceedings. And so that's generally the flow. Right now, I don't think it's quite clear how many witnesses will be called, but it could be anywhere between, I don't know, 3, 4, or 5 witnesses, something in that order is our understanding at this point. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you. And Commissioner Hicks, this will be in the Robinson Ceremonial Courtroom at Loyola, a courtroom I know that you know very well. Anyone else? Looks like there's no further discussion. I want to thank both Lil and Rob for their work on this issue. Sheriff Villanueva on February 16th, 2022, openly challenged every elected leader or their appointees to provide facts to him about the existence of deputy gangs. And this commission has risen to that challenge in a way that other government agencies, I think, have not. And I just think that this is a really positive step forward in dealing with this issue. So, Lael, thank you so much. And Rob, thank you for all the difficult logistics with the subpoenas, because I know there's a great fear of retaliation. That said, if we are done with commissioner comments, I think that it's time for public comment on this topic, the issue of deputy gangs.
Sure. And before we get started, we will have an announcement in Spanish.
Buenos días. Si desea que sus comentarios sean traducidos de español a inglés, simplemente diga la palabra español antes de comenzar a hablar y alguien le dirá cómo proceder. Gracias.
Thank you. And we'll begin with Julie Martinez. If you have not raised your hand to make public comment, please do so now regarding deputy gangs. If you have called in on the phone, please press *3 to get in queue to be unmuted. So with that, Julie, please go ahead.
Good morning, and thank you for this opportunity to again address the Commission. For more than 5 decades, tattooed white supremacist neo-Nazi deputy gangs among the ranks and management of LA County Sheriff Department have wreaked havoc in Los Angeles, costing county taxpayers at least $100 million since the 1990s, often adopting white supremacist and neo-Nazi ideologies and imagery. LASD gangs have emerged in Black and brown communities where it is perceived that it's acceptable to brutalize, lie, and engage in crime in our communities. Deputy gangs have emerged in Black and Latinx areas and have adopted white supremacist ideologies. In 1990, the federal court described the Linwood Vikings as a neo-Nazi white supremacist gang, and the executioner's symbol is a skull with a Nazi helmet. We are at a tipping point. We have witnessed tragedy we have witnessed the dangerous criminal behavior of Sheriff Villanueva. Let's not forget, he denied the total existence of gangs until whistleblowers came forward. Unfortunately, the community, the greater community, did not accept our firsthand when we described that deputy gangs did exist. It actually occurred when many large, for example, CBS began to report on deputy gangs. These deputy gang members who wear badges, which are paid, by the way, by residents that they patrol, they wield extraordinary power. Of course, I have mentioned that my grandson, Paul Rea, was murdered by Deputy Saavedra, who was a prospect of the East LA Sheriff Deputy Gang called the Bandidos. His gang moniker is Listos, which means ready to shoot. The new commissioners have stated that trust between the community and the sheriff is important. We are at a tipping point. We are at a point in which we, the people, prefer to
Conclude your time.
There is not any trust.
And next we will hear from Christina Vasquez. If you could acknowledge the unmute, Christina. Okay, it looks like that is not happening right now. We'll move on to Tamra. Please go ahead, Tamra. Tamra, if you can acknowledge the request to unmute.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Please go ahead.
There's some technical issues with the connection is going on, so if you could just start my time over. So Sheriff Alex Villanueva has enabled deputy gangs and problem deputies to engage in greater misconduct and excessive force. From the moment he was elected, he sought to reinstate Carl excuse me if I'm mispronouncing this, Mandoyan, known Grim Reaper deputy gang member who had been fired for beating up and stalking his ex-girlfriend. Villanueva has gone from denying the existence of deputy gangs to claiming that they are only harmless fraternities, even comparing them to ICU nurses with matching tattoos of hearts. Despite these statements, he has also he is the first sheriff to deal with deputy gangs by adopting a policy. Of course, none of Villanueva's claims are true. While it is true that in response to the pressure of the Civilian Oversight Commission, Villanueva adopted policy pretending to limit membership, this policy effectively does nothing at all, smoke and mirrors. Importantly, Villanueva's policy does not prohibit soliciting or joining deputy gangs. Instead, it only ties punishment with a separate misconduct. In doing so, Villanueva ignores the long, well-recorded history of deputy gangs and their principal purpose of misconduct and civil rights violations. Further, Villanueva's policy does not require LASD to identify deputy gangs or to cooperate with oversight bodies, including the Office of the Inspector General or the California Attorney General. Villanueva has purported policy falls short of the COC's proposed policy on deputy gangs, and if likely violates the new state law prohibiting law enforcement.
That does conclude your time. Next, we have Carlos Monte. So request has been sent to unmute you. If you can acknowledge that, we can take your comment.
I'm sorry, I signed up for a different item, the charter amendment.
No problem. We'll take you then. Next
Thank
will
you very
be,
much.
thank you, MJ King. A request has been sent to unmute. Please go ahead, MJ.
I don't know what more to say. Every meeting that I've attended has discussed the deputy gangs that have ruled the department for more than decades. As Ms. Martinez acknowledged, they've been costing taxpayers at least $100 million since the 90s. Sheriff Villanueva has actively covered up and enabled these deputy gangs. Villanueva must go. You have reports from Loyola Law that the majority of shootings come out of the stations most riddled by deputy gangs. The RAND report, reports from ODR, extensive reports from the OIG. What more do you need? Andres Guardado, Anthony Vargas, Paul Rea, Jorge Serrano, Jelani Lovett, just a few whose lives were stolen by LASD. Whose loved one is next?
And MJ, it looks like you've muted yourself, so we will move on to Pastor Q. A request has been sent. If you could acknowledge to unmute. And please go ahead.
Yeah, good morning again. I would like to speak to this, to the broader context, right? We know what just occurred in Buffalo. We know that during January 6th, there were law enforcement folks who went to the Capitol and were never disciplined, were swept under the rug. We always talk about building trust in communities, but in order to build trust, you've got to have a foundation of trust, right? As a matter of fact, I know for sure in the Black community, most Black people trusted law enforcement, and there's still a significant number of folks that have trusted law enforcement. So it's the hourglass, the glass was full from the beginning. They had trust in the very beginning, even though law enforcement in this nation was actually evolved from citizens militias that were slave catchers, right? But even so, Black folks trusted law enforcement, and many still do. That is why Black folks supported the 1994 crime bill, which decimated our own communities. Right? I say all that to say that harboring these gangs in our sheriff department and having a rogue sheriff who doesn't feel like he's accountable to anyone is not building trust. And there's some things like Pandora's box, once you open it, you can't put it back in the bottle. Okay? So once you lose trust, and law enforcement has done a great job of eroding trust in our communities for decades.
Thank you. And next, Tracy Lee. A request has been sent to unmute you if you would like to make a public comment on this item. And it looks like we are not seeing a response from you, so we will move on. There's two more individuals signed up for public comment on this item, Richie and Jacqueline Venters. Richie, a request has been sent for you to unmute. Please go ahead.
Hi, yes, so Richie Serjenko again. Obviously, this commission has heard plenty of testimony on LASD gangs, and you know, it's been going on for decades and decades. And as Pastor Q was talking about in Buffalo, white supremacy is an issue, and we have tattooed white supremacist neo-Nazi deputy gangs within the sheriff's department. These gangs have cost taxpayers over $100 million since the 1990s, and so it's just unfathomable that these gangs, LASD, has been able to operate the way it has with basically impunity. Every year they get budget increases. Villanueva is able to do whatever he wants. He's able to cover up murders. They're able to get Miguel Vega out of the country, the murder of Andres Godardo, and he calls out the families of Anthony Vargas and Paul Rea on social media. There's just a real insidious nature within LASD, and because of the deputy gang culture. And Villanueva himself, he doesn't want to be held accountable. He's involved in so many cover-ups. We just have to do whatever we can to rid LA County of the serious issue of deputy gangs within the sheriff's department. I'll yield the rest of my time. Thank you.
Thank you. And we did have a couple of additional folks raise their hand. Jacqueline Venters, if you could acknowledge the request to unmute. Please
Good
go
morning.
ahead.
Good morning. And this go past our new sheriff. This has been going on for many, many years. And now it comes to accountability. And my relationship with the sheriff department is very valuable because they're some of the people that's pushing me because they're aware of this corruption. I have family members at Compton Station, Century Station, and Lenox Station. And them with God has been guiding me because they are aware of the corruption that's inside of these stations, but they're limited to what they could do. Look what just happened to the guy that, the whistleblower at Compton Station. Everything that he said was true. He told my son's story. What happened to my son with the planting of the gun, the false reports, and everything. And these gangs are real. They're telling. These gangs are real. The executioner, Deputy Gazelle Azusa, the one that shot my son, he's part of the Jump Out Boys. The Vikings, the Banditos. This been going along on for a long time, and now it's time to hold them accountable. Now that law enforcement, most of them feel like they're above the law, and I'm looking at our new sheriff. This is what have helped me get this far. Is their disrespect to the system. Dep Inspector General has sent 3 notices to this office over the years for them to do investigation into Tanel Billups' shooting 5 times in the back, and they have done nothing but cover up, cover up, cover up. Now it's time for us to fight back. And I want to thank Mr. Bonner for years ago when he requested that he be recalled or removed or whatever he said. I will never forget that day because that's what started pushing this line forward. And together we could make it better. We just got to continue to fight. I've been fighting for 11 years and I'm somewhere now.
Thank you, Jacqueline. And Michelle Infante, if you could acknowledge the unmute request. Please go ahead, Michelle.
Thank you. LASD absolutely has deputy gangs. The banditos, the executioners, the rattlesnakes. We keep going over this, the Grim Reapers. And now it recently saw an article that said KKK-like white supremacist group at Pitches, where Conrad Thymane, deputy, punched a woman who was having a mental health crisis. He punched her in the throat. The systemic corruption runs deep with deputy gangs, sexual assaults by deputies against women in our county jails and in our communities. And all of that just happened recently. Obstruction of justice and withholding evidence of deputy use of force on video, intimidating and retaliating against journalists, Max Huntsman from the OIG's office, Supervisor Solis, for statements and video that show him contradicting himself. The fact is, the murderer cannot continue to investigate the murder. That's the fact. They are murderers and they continue to investigate the murder. It's a complete abuse of power. And why isn't this guilt by association, or why isn't he considered an accessory to the fact? He allows people to continue to die with his deputies inside our jails. And over again, he gets away with murder. It's murder when you kill somebody and you shoot someone 13 times in the back. Families are truly traumatized by what's going on here. And for us to continue on a monthly basis, year after year, over and over again, to talk about deputy gangs and for us to be reading you the facts when you already have them, just shows how politics plays a huge part in trying to get justice for the families. I know your hands are tied, but please do your best to help these families. This is ridiculous what's going on. We're all tired of coming forward and talking about the same agenda over and over again. There should be new agendas and new problems going on, not the same ones that continue decades after decades. Thank you.
Does conclude your time. And the last person signed up for public comment is Steve Hill. Please go ahead, Steve.
Yes. Hello to everybody on this commission. Listen, these gangs have been prevalent in the department since I was a correctional officer back in the early 90s and would participate in the police Olympics and would be told about these gangs firsthand from people who were in these gangs. And there's been nothing done about it over this extended period of time. Now, as being a former corrections officer, I know that gangs, you have to start at the top of the gang if you want those gangs dispersed. And I think Alex Villanueva is the one that actually needs to go. I was arrested on March 7th, and this is something the commission needs to know. I was arrested on March 7th and guns confiscated. And to this very day, nobody has been able to get the paperwork for my arrest stating exactly why I was arrested. The Department of Justice settlement team is aware of this. I've given them all the documentation. The state DOJ is at odds with the sheriff's department because the state DOJ who arrested me or assisted, they're not able to ascertain any information from the sheriff's department. And I believe this was for speaking out at a meeting that was held in Leona Valley. I'm in the Antelope Valley. This was for speaking out at a meeting, and it was political retaliation because I was a candidate for Congress at the time. I would really like to have someone from the commission take a look at all the documentation I have. The DOJ is not pressing any charges. They told me not to go to court because they can't get any information from the sheriff's department now. No one can. So this really needs to be looked into. They traumatized my family, wife, kids, everybody. And they have my father's guns, World War II vet. I need help.
Thank you, Steve. And Carlos, I see that you have raised your hand. I wasn't sure. Do you want to make a comment on the deputy
Yes,
gangs?
yes,
Okay, please
yes.
go ahead.
Okay, yeah, yeah. Thank you very much. This is Carlos Montes. You know, I grew up in East LA, dealing with the sheriffs back since the 60s, 70s, 80s. Right, I have a lot of friends in East LA. Oh, excuse me, I'm getting over an allergy. I wasn't going to say anything, but I have information from two separate sources, folks that are very close in the department or have relatives in the department, right? And I put it out. I forgot I put it out at a rally a couple of years ago that Villanueva worked at the East LA Sheriff Station, and he joined one of the gangs. So I will call him out and ask him, "Will you deny it?" He hasn't denied it. I think a couple of people have publicly asked him, and he avoids it. But he was at the East LA Sheriff Station for quite a few years. So again, I have it from two separate sources within the department that's told me straight out he joined the bandito. So I'm gonna put it out publicly right here. We're talking about deputy gangs. He protects them. He supports them. He calls them cliques. He calls them social clubs. And so I'm putting that out on the record again. I did it at a rally in front of Jackie Lacey's office, and we're trying to get rid of her. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Carlos. And
Yeah.
Chair Kennedy, that does conclude all of the public comment regarding deputy gangs.
Thank you so much. If I could ask if we could follow up with Mr. Hill, who has some documents he wants to give us. I'd like to see those. And having concluded the public comment, I think it's appropriate now for us to vote on the motion to ratify the 4 subpoenas issued for next Tuesday's hearing that I signed as the current chair of the commission and that were fully vetted by the entire ad hoc committee on subpoenas as reported by Commissioner Bonner. So should we take a vote?
Okay. Commissioner Bonner,
Aye.
Commissioner Cooper,
Aye.
Commissioner Garcia,
Aye.
Commissioner Hagans,
Aye.
Commissioner Harris,
Aye.
Commissioner Hicks,
Aye.
Chair Kennedy,
Yes.
Commissioner Rubin.
Yes.
Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you. We have been going almost 2 hours. I think that we should take a 15-minute break before we take up the issue of the resolution in support of amending the Los Angeles County Charter. Is there any problem with us taking the break? I'm a little early on the agenda, but we've been going a long time. So I'll see everyone in 15 minutes from now. So that would be, I think, 11:03.
We are coming up with about 3 minutes left on our break. If you are a commissioner and in front of your computer, if you'd like to turn your camera on now, that'd be great. We have 1 minute remaining on break. If you're a commissioner in front of your computer, please turn your camera on. Okay, it is 11:03. If the commissioners would like to turn their cameras on, and Chair Kennedy, whenever you would like to resume the meeting.
Thank you. Okay, we have most of our commissioners here, so we're going to start up anew. The next agenda item, 3B, deals with a resolution in support of amending the LA County Charter. And our COC staff member, Eric Montalban Lara, is going to introduce our speaker from the ACLU and talk about this resolution and hopefully invite a robust conversation about an important issue. So Eric, I'm going to cede the floor to you.
Thank you, Commissioner Kennedy. Chair Kennedy, I'm sorry. Good morning, commissioners. So the Sheriff's Department has been in existence since April of 1850, according to their website. And what that means is that for 172 years, the sheriff has been free to do as he pleases. And history has shown that there have been some sheriffs that have abused their unchecked power. For example, Sheriff John Casper Klein, he was accused of embezzling funds that were meant to feed incarcerated people in county jail in the amount equivalent to $21,000 per month in today's dollar valuation. He was also accused of fixing 600 speeding violation tickets and using county funds and a county vehicle for a personal trip. Now, the Board of Supervisors tried to rein in Sheriff Klein with civil litigation, and they actually won some judgments against him, but that did little to compel him to change his behavior. Sheriff Klein was eventually removed from office, but not by the Board of Supervisors. After all, the sheriff is an elected official. So the Board of Supervisors had to sue Sheriff Klein for misfeasance in office and ask the court to remove him. The court eventually sided with the Board of Supervisors, and that was the end of Sheriff Klein. However, That happened over 100 years ago. And most recently, we've witnessed Sheriff Baca get sentenced to 3 years in prison for obstruction of justice and lying to federal investigators. And regarding the current sheriff, we have all bore witness to the laundry list of behaviors and statements that are listed in our resolution of no confidence that this commission passed in our October 2020 meeting. If anybody from the public wants to read that resolution, you can find it on our website, or I believe a link will be posted in the chat to this meeting. So it's suffice it to say, we need stronger local control over the sheriff and the sheriff's department. The resolution before you has two directives, each dealing with amending the county charter to ensure accountability and transparency with respect to the sheriff and the sheriff's department. First directive asks the Board of Supervisors to place a charter amendment on the ballot to create a procedure that will allow the Board of Supervisors to impeach and remove the sheriff for serious violations of public trust, including but not limited to serious crime, unconstitutional conduct, and abuse of power. The second directive asks the Board of Supervisors to place a charter amendment on the ballot to incorporate the Civilian Oversight Commission and the Office of Inspector General into the LA County Charter, including our power to subpoena records and testimony. And with us today is Melanie Ochoa. Ms. Ochoa is Director of Police Practices at the ACLU of Southern California. Ms. Ochoa will provide some background and more detail regarding the two charter amendments. And after a presentation, she will be available to answer your questions. And with that, I will hand it over to Ms. Ochoa. Welcome, Ms. Ochoa.
Thank you. Can you hear me? Yes, okay, great. So good morning. As introduced, I'm Melanie Ochoa, Director of Police Practices at the ACLU of Southern California. Thank you, commissioners, for addressing the need for charter reform around the LA Sheriff. We agree with you that it is necessary to create a removal mechanism for the sheriff that does not require the tremendous resource investment of a recall campaign and instead relies on the Board of Supervisors to perform their role as the stewards of the county. Advocates have been pushing for this for nearly 3 years, and we are hopeful that the COC's strong endorsement of this measure will help the board vote to place this charter amendment on the ballot and get it before the people. The need for this authority is evident when one considers the fact that we have one former sheriff sitting in a federal prison for his indifference to the safety and well-being of those within his department's custody and care, and hostility to oversight and intervention. We now have another sheriff that defies subpoenas, threatens impacted families that dare to speak publicly about their own harassment, terminates discipline for deputies counter to existing policies and common sense, endorses and shields members of deputy gangs, intimidates and fabricates charges against individuals performing any form of oversight, such as the IG, the DA, or even the press, and in every sense acts as though the laws and policies do not apply to him. It is apparent to anyone who's paying attention that we need more tools to ensure that, ironically, those who are entrusted with the power to enforce the law are following it themselves, and not simply using that power to inflict harm upon the vulnerable communities or to punish their political adversaries. That is the bare minimum that we should expect from any member of law enforcement, elected or not, and it is crucial that the board has the power necessary to step in if the sheriff fails to meet that standard. On that basis alone, the charter amendment is necessary. However, we must have a higher standard for how LASD and the sheriff operate. We cannot simply be content that the sheriff can, hypothetically, be removed for severe violations of the public trust and then throw up our hands as he continues to commit actions that harm, endanger, threaten, and violate the rights of those living and working within the county in ways that fall short of whatever standard might propel the board to take the serious step of removal. The only intervention by the County Board of Supervisors cannot be once the sheriff has committed so much misconduct that the board is convinced that he must be removed from office. And this is why advocates have argued that a necessary part of the charter amendment is the codification of the board's existing authority to oversee and set policies for LASD that do not interfere with the statutory authority of the sheriff or otherwise conflict with state law, and a process to allow the COC to develop and propose policies for the board's consideration and action. This amendment draws on existing authority. It does not create new authority. However, The reason that it is necessary to have this enshrined as a charter amendment is that in the absence of a clear statement of the board's power and the public's endorsement of its right to intervene in the functioning of the sheriff's department up to the limits of the law, this power will go unused, as it has for years. There are already over 70 wide-ranging organizations that endorse this proposal, and we need to make it a reality. The sheriff authority is not absolute. However, throughout the state, including here in LA County, bombastic sheriffs act as though the only check on their power comes every 4 years at the ballot box, and the boards of supervisors are reluctant to challenge that. Supervisors have faced retaliation from sheriffs, such as refusing to cooperate, to respond to service calls from supervisorial districts who even suggest oversight or accountability mechanisms, or use their positions to informally challenge the legality or political motivations of even basic supervisorial actions. This is conduct consistent with what Villanueva has done here, but he is not the only sheriff who has responded in that way in an attempt to undercut the necessary role of the supervisors to ensure that the sheriff's department is working within the limits of the law and not against the best interests of the people of the county. Because of this dance, with the sheriffs asserting more power than they actually have, and supervisors discouraged from pushing their power to its actual limits, sheriffs are often left unchecked, and the public pays the price for the supervisors' timidity, despite how grounded in their own experiences that may be. That is why it is crucial that the board include enshrining the policymaking authority in the charter along with its removal authority. The power to protect without the willingness to do so is meaningless. So while the county technically has the tools now to protect the public from the violence and misconduct perpetrated by LASD deputies and sanctioned by this sheriff as well as his predecessors, its failure to act has unnecessarily cost lives, freedom, the dignity of countless Angelenos, and millions of dollars, both in LASD expenses and damages incurred by the public, much of which is never compensated. The COC should amend this resolution to add the policymaking authority to the charter to overcome any ambiguity in the power the law provides or the public's desire for the board, with the assistance of the COC, to exercise that power. And I want to just take a moment too to reflect on the public comments that we've heard to this point that underscore how these same issues, deputy gangs, violence in the jails, is ongoing, never addressed for years, decades. The frustration of the public in the county's failure to do more to rein in the department, particularly where we have a sheriff that is uninterested in any kind of accountability or real change. So we have to push the board to do more, take more action, be more assertive in actually fulfilling its duty to oversee and supervise LASD and work in the best interest of county residents. And we cannot continue to keep going as we have. And I would just implore the COC to add to its resolution, which is already a great step forward, to include this policymaking authority so that we push the board to also move forward with that as well. Thank you, and I'm happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Do we have any questions or comments from our commissioners? Commissioner Bonner?
A couple of questions, I think, mainly, but one would be in terms of, first of all, I think the idea of having a removal mechanism of some sort is desirable. I mean, on a policy level. But as the sheriff is a constitutional officer under the Constitution of our state, it seems to me that this removal mechanism might be subject to a, let's say, reasonably difficult legal challenge. So I'd like to hear from the ACLU on how they've evaluated that in terms of essentially the legality or constitutionality of the removal provision of the proposed charter amendment. Secondly, just to put another question on the table, I'm always a bit wary about making anything permanent because you never know what may happen in the future, and it does tie the hands of the board. On the other hand, I'm sort of torn because I'm very much a proponent of making sure that the Sheriff Civilian Oversight Commission is independent and is viewed as independent. And I think establishing the commission as a permanent body perhaps would help on that issue. But I note that the policymaking authority, that this is sort of the second aspect of the charter amendment as I'm reading it, to change, let's say, LA Sheriff's Department policy, it gives the Board of Supervisors that authority. And I'm wondering whether, if you had a permanent oversight commission, whether it might be more appropriate to have that authority in the Oversight Commission, not in the Board of Supervisors. There are a variety of reasons why I think that might be a better approach, rather than having the Oversight Commission simply propose changes in policy that would be then adopted or potentially adopted by the board. So I'm wondering whether that was considered and whether there's any opportunity to even amend this proposed charter amendment at this point. But I don't know whether those two questions are for Ms. Ochoa or forgotten the name of the individual who first spoke on behalf of the ACLU. But those are two questions. Perhaps you want to take more questions before we have them answer them, but I would like some response to those two questions, Commissioner Kennedy.
I'm
Melanie?
happy to jump. Yeah, I'm happy to jump in, and if others want to chime in, happy to do so. So to the first question about the legality of it, great news. The California Court of Appeal has already held that the removal mechanism and this structured in the same way is legal in Penrod v. County of San Bernardino in 2005. And the county council has also opined to the Board of Supervisors back in January of 2021 that enshrining this removal authority is legal. So we're on strong footing. Now, that said, despite the fact that there is strong footing, we know with this administration, there's always going to be legal challenges, even to the clearest statements of the law. So litigation is almost certainly a given, no matter what happens, it moves forward. And I really do not hope that, I really hope that concern about the sheriff or any future administration's response to increased oversight, increased accountability is not a determining factor in whether or not it should be moved forward. If it's right, it's right. And the fact that the sheriff doesn't want to be held accountable is unsurprising, and we shouldn't let that opposition be a determining factor in whether or not we take the right steps. But in terms of legality of it, that's clear, and that's not a question. The second question was on the policymaking authority and whether the charter could be amended. Right now, there's no proposal to put before the voters, so it can include or not include whatever the board decides to move forward. The timing deadline, I think, is around the end of July for them to actually put something on the ballot, if I'm correct. So they have time to propose, take considerations, amend in advance of that. But as I said, nothing is currently even pending as a board motion that I'm aware of. So it can be amended. I think the reason why the proposal had been as it was to both enshrine house the policymaking authority that is going to be included in the charter in the board is because that is already clear. The board's authority to do this is in the state statutes. It's in county law that the board can set policies, it can supervise, etc. So whether that power can be delegated to a commission as well is a separate legal question. But because the COC is so engaged, obviously, to a level that far exceeds what the supervisors have in terms of what is going on in the county, what the public concerns are, etc. That is why we believe that the COC should play an important role in proposing policy recommendations that the board must consider. I think too often, so much of the good work that happens in this space doesn't make it before the board so that they can actually take action and move things forward. So we want to include a mechanism to allow the commission to propose policies that the board must consider, that not necessarily have its hands bound by what the commission proposes, but at least to substantively discuss it so that it's put on their agenda so that the public can engage with them and tell them how important these policies are and actions that the public thinks need to be taken so that the board actually moves on them and they don't languish after the COC has actually taken action.
If I could just a quick follow-up, but isn't if you look at what is perhaps the best practice and a model in the Los Angeles Police Department, the LAPD commission is, I believe, a policy setting commission. It's not, it doesn't go to somebody and say, here's what we propose or recommend. And I'm wondering whether that's not the better model. And I don't know whether you have any particular answer to that, but I would at least like us to think about that model. Thanks.
Just flag that is accurate. But there are differences between LA City and its relationship to police, it's the police department versus LA County and its relationship to the sheriff's department that make adoption of a similar model more complicated. Also, the Civilian Oversight Commission, while the Police Commission, while it's kind of denoted as a civilian oversight body, it's actually the administrative arm of the police department, and so its independence is a little bit different, and its engagement with the department is different as well. So just wanted to flag those things. Yes, that is absolutely different model, and a model that has more authority and more power, and there are benefits of that for sure, and there are also benefits of having a more distinct body opining on what the policy should be as well. And there are limitations imposed by the sheriff relationship to the county.
Thank you.
Anyone else like to ask a question or make a statement about this important resolution? Leo?
I strongly believe that the resolution is well taken, well drafted, and I would join in the amendment that Ms. Ochoa proposed. I'd like to make a motion that the commission urge the board to place this on the ballot in November. I think this is more than an appropriate time to move forward.
Just for sake of clarity, wouldn't the motion be to adopt this resolution? I mean, don't we need a motion for that?
I just thought that I made it. So the motion is to adopt the resolution that is presently before us and include the amendment that Ms. Ochoa has requested on expanding the policy of this commission in terms of how the board reviews what we on this commission do.
Is there a second?
I second.
We'll hold the vote after a comment. Do other commissioners have comments? I see JP, you have a comment.
Thank you, Chair Kennedy. I agree with the ACLU and other commissioners that we definitely need a vehicle to remove a rogue sheriff. And I have been of that belief for decades before sitting on this commission. I think we all need to be extremely cautious that we don't enact laws, rules, regulations, county ordinances, amend the charter based upon personality. I don't think that's the case here, but I just offer that as a cautionary note. Because clearly the existing sheriff has been a lightning rod, and if he were not the sheriff right now, I don't know that we'd be having this conversation. But that said, I truly believe this is something we need to do. So I total agreement with that. I just have some concerns. It talks about words escaping me now. Basically to convict, to remove him from office. And isn't that just a charging mechanism to, and I apologize, I'm stumbling all over myself here. Let me get the right word.
Don't worry about the nomenclature, JP.
Well, it's
Just-
important because it's an important distinction, and okay, here it. I don't know why I couldn't think of it. Totally drawn a blank. To impeach and remove. Okay, that's sort of my issue. I think we've seen a whole lot of impeachments here at the federal level in the last few years that did not end up in removal. And from what my reading, impeachment is more of a charging vehicle, that you're making allegations, assertions that they have committed in the federal parlance, high crimes and misdemeanors. That's not what we're using here, but to bring forward an action that could ultimately lead to a removal. And so I would like to know what is your read on that, and if that is an accurate read, who then tries the individual to remove them from office, or is it just like an Australian marsupial that 4 members of the board of supervisors can just say, we want them out of here, boom, that's it. And I'm not sure I'm real comfortable with that. And I know some commissioners have raised the issue that, sheriffs always wrap themselves very tightly in this issue of we're elected by the people. We are only answerable to the people. And I think we all know that all elected officials are elected by the people and are answerable to the people. And can any elected official be removed from office? Yes, and it's generally through a recall process. I totally agree. Well, let's put it this way. If there wasn't $1 million plus price tag on bringing a recall effort to the fore with this current sheriff, I think we wouldn't be having this conversation right now either, because I think there would have been a recall, but it costs a lot of money. And that was brought out by Ms. Ochoa, and I appreciate that. So I'm a couple of questions. Hey, how does this, the impeachment and the removal, how would that work? And the second thing is, wouldn't the ability for the board, the supervisors, by a supermajority, like a 5-4 vote, for them to call for a special election, in other words, removing that huge price tag, that $1 million plus, which is used for collecting signatures, that would all be eliminated. Yes, there would still be a cost to the recall election. I understand that. But would that not be perhaps a better way to proceed to get us to where we want to be, which would be a rapid removal of a sheriff that is turned out to not be working in the interests of the public. So I hope I didn't make that too confusing.
Melanie,
So for Ms. Ochoa, I would ask that question. So how does this impeachment and removal process work in your view?
So at this point, I think county council still needs to make that determination. I know they submitted a memo, a confidential memo on this to the board. I think that lays out more of this. Obviously, the public didn't have access to that, so I'm not sure what their position. I see Sean laughing. I'm not sure what their position is on this. I don't know if someone here representing the county council could speak to that today. I think the question of, if I'm understanding correctly, what happens after, number one, the impeachment language doesn't have to necessarily be the language that is used. It can be removal in any form. And then secondly, the replacement of who is to step in. The proposal that we have recommended, or advocates have recommended, is for the board to temporarily appoint someone with advice of COC, so that it is less directly determined by the board independently. And there were concerns previously expressed over granting too much power to the board if they can kind of replace whatever elected sheriff they want with whoever they want to put in there, and thus including the COC to create at least a slate of individuals that have to be selected from, would also help balance some of that power as well.
Okay, and that's fine, because that is what I would envision, that the Board of Supervisors, if the sheriff were removed, either through this process as proposed or through a recall election, that they would probably appoint someone until the next election, in which time the citizenry would be able to select the sheriff of their choice. But my question is, though, I'm concerned about getting the sheriff removed in a timely fashion if you have a sheriff that has gone rogue, and not having it drag out for 3 years while it works through the court system, all this other happy stuff. Whereas it seems to me that perhaps with a four-fifths vote of the Board of Supervisors, that they could direct a special election to cause for the removal of the sheriff. And that could happen, in whatever language we like, as soon as possible, within 60 days, within 90 days. I realize there's some mechanical issues there, because, running an election in the county of Los Angeles isn't quick and it's not cheap. But it can still be done. They're pretty nimble on putting out special elections. Wouldn't that be a method that would be, to me, almost cleaner, that the electorate again gets to decide, do you want to retain this sheriff? And they can answer that question, yes or no. And if the answer is no, then of course I think your recommendation, or what you stated, would be an excellent proposal, that they just the Board of Supervisors appoint an interim until the next election. So, but I'm just wondering, is that not possible? Is there some reason we don't think that would be a good alternative?
I think conceptually, while that sounds attractive, having that power in the hands of the public, part of the reason why that would be a problem and would not be ideal is that if the sheriff is actually acting in such a way that is so harmful, it is still quite possible that members of the public don't care, because they are not the ones being harmed, right? When you have the sheriff acting with impunity towards members of the jail, when you have them acting with impunity towards people of certain communities and not others, we cannot allow just the majority to say, that's fine, right? We want the board to step in and say, no, this is not permissible. Just because you're okay with these harms being perpetrated on others does not mean that that's not already against the law, that's not already against his oath of office, that it's not already against policy, that it's not already grounds for removal if he was just a sheriff. As a sheriff deputy. I'm sorry. So I think the reason that we don't want to just allow the public to have when the sheriff has committed acts that are so egregious, to not just have it be a referendum on whether or not we're okay with him continuing to commit these egregious acts, right? And I think we've talked about Villanueva as kind of the Trump of LA, and I think that's demonstrative in a few ways, right? And that despite the degree of harms that are perpetrated, despite the degree of illegality that has been perpetrated by a person, there are still people that are willing to put them back in office. And so I don't think that the safety of the public should be subject to the whims of how likable to a particular voting population as the sheriff may be. And I think also, given the degree of knowledge that would need to be had about kind of what the sheriff has done, what he's doing to even make that assessment, it would not be ideal to have that be just subject to public vote.
And I don't want to monopolize this whole conversation, so I'll end it with this. I mean, I tend to agree with you, but once again, we need to be cautionary that we're not just doing this because we don't like the current guy. Because the current guy will not be sheriff forever. Someone else will be in there, which, just by fact of that's just how the world works. So we don't want to make decisions just because we're mad at a particular sheriff. But you say, we will leave this to the whim of the electorate. And don't get me wrong, I understand the electorate put him in office. So, but on the other hand, we're going to leave it to the whim of 4 people in a county of 10 million. I'm not sure I'm real good with that. And again, don't get me wrong, I really think we need a methodology to get rid of a rogue sheriff. And this may be the best we can do. Maybe this is how we go. But I'm just concerned about that we have 4 politicians picking out another politician. And I'm not sure our democracy is designed to necessarily work that way. And again, I know that, as has been pointed out to me by other commissioners, that every elected official can be removed from office by other elected officials. I get that. But I think that only 4 elected officials can kick out another elected official, I'm not sure I'm real comfortable with that. But end of my comments. Thank you so much. I appreciate your input.
I just wanted to add one more thing. Just, I don't know if this is a little bit address your concern about this being too focused on the person who is currently in that office. Just to be clear that the proposed grounds for removal, at least that we have advocated for, are very limited. So it would include the knowing violation of any law related to the performance of sheriff's duties, falsification of official statements and documents, obstruction of investigations into the conduct of the sheriff or LASD employees, criminal conduct that would be grounds for termination of a sheriff's deputy, or failure in supervision, discipline, or hiring of deputies that results in a pattern of violations or of standards of conduct for LASD. So ideally the bar is already at least high enough for setting this process in motion that it could not be used simply as a political tool to eliminate sheriffs who you dislike without a demonstration that there's actual significant harm being perpetrated against the community, or that someone has so turned their back on the oath that they supposedly took in terms of being willing to uphold the law and protect the communities they serve.
Okay. Thank you very much. I appreciate that clarification. Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, I just want to, go ahead, Irma.
Hi,
We can't hear you, Irma.
Hi, Miss Melanie. Thank you for coming and talking to us about this important issue. I strongly believe that there should be some accountability. Now, we know that you're going to have we will have strong opposition from the sheriff's union. Are there any other agencies that you know of that will be giving us strong pushback on this? Because my concern is, how long will it be tied up in court, and will it truly benefit the people if we're going 5 and 6 years into, battling in the court whether or not this is legal or illegal?
I mean, I think as the presentations and public comment has already demonstrated, we're in this for the long game, right? This is not just about the person who's in office right now. We've had this issue repeatedly over the past with sheriffs just disregarding their oath and the safety of the communities they intend to serve or intended to serve. So I think, while the hope is that it would not be tied up in litigation, particularly around the removal power, because as I said, that is clearly established by existing Court of Appeal precedent. This proposal was modeled after that prior, what was approved in that case. And so ideally it would be brief litigation on that point, if any, but we need to fight it. If they're going to fight, then we need to fight back, because we can't just be willing to say the ALADS doesn't like it, so we're not going to do it, because they're going to fight tooth and nail for everything. They're fighting, as Sean, Commissioner Kennedy mentioned. No, this is a year from issuing the subpoena that you're even being heard before the court. But that doesn't mean subpoena power isn't necessary or can't serve a tremendous purpose moving it forward. So, we have 70 organizations that have already signed on to this, and they'll be behind you and behind the county if they need to, push this forward. We can't, let the preferences of a organization whose sole purpose is that, deputies are not held accountable for their misconduct determine kind of the safety of the public in this instance.
Thank you. There's been lots of questions about the legality, and I just want to add that it's not just the ACLU who believes that this is legal, although the ACLU is a great source of legal analysis, in my opinion. On March 29th, 2021, Loyola Law School's Policing LA Forum invited the scholar David Carrillo, a scholar of the California Constitution and the executive director of the California Constitution Center at Berkeley Law School, to opine whether this a removal mechanism of this type was legal. And Professor Carrillo stated that our Constitution, our state Constitution, has no bar to a board of supervisor creating mechanisms for impeachment or removal of a sheriff for misconduct. And he cited the same case, San Bernardino case that Melanie has spoken of. So I think there's a great authority for doing this. And I also think that this is a long overdue reform in Los Angeles County. While election is and should be the primary vehicle for accountability of the sheriff, there is no reason it is the exclusive vehicle for accountability. We elect the president, but we all know that the president is subject to impeachment and removal by other elected politicians in the Congress. The founders instituted impeachment on the federal level precisely because they understood that some executive officials must be immediately accountable for acts of serious misconduct that harm our society, and that elections alone cannot achieve full accountability. So impeachment and elections work in tandem together to ensure full, meaningful accountability. And if it's true for the president, JP, I think it should be true of the office of the sheriff. We give the Los Angeles Sheriff's Department $3.5 billion of public funds every year, and the deputies are allowed to arrest and even use force against members of the public in order to achieve public safety. Given that power, I think it's imperative that there be some immediate accountability vehicle, and this seems to be the best one that we can have right now. And so, I like Lael, I strongly support this resolution.
I will also just add Dean Chemerinsky and also Miriam Krinsky, the former ED of CC Commission on Jail Violence, as two other individuals who endorsed the charter amendment recently in an op-ed in the LA Times, including the removal power and the policy authority, ensuring the policy authority of the board and the COC.
Okay, seeing no other hands, I think we should move to public comment because I suspect many members of the public want to weigh in on this resolution.
Will do. As a reminder, if you have not already raised your hand and you would like to provide public comment on the resolution, please raise your hand now. If you have called in on the phone, please press *3. And before we take the first speaker, who is Tamra, we will take an announcement in Spanish.
Buenos días. Si desea que sus comentarios se traduzcan de español a inglés, simplemente diga la palabra español antes de comenzar a hablar y alguien le dirá cómo proceder. Gracias.
Thank you. And Tamra, if you would like to begin, you'll have 2 minutes on the clock.
Thank you so much. And I want to really thank Miss Melanie Ochoa. We really appreciate your work, ma'am. The commission should recommend the Board of Supervisors refer to voters a ballot measure that would amend the LA County Charter to maximize civilian oversight and common sense checks and balances over the sheriff and LASD. The Board of Supervisors, which is responsible for the health and safety of the public, including the supervision of the sheriff, has not implemented policies and structures necessary to protect against the sheriff's abuse of power, including repeated violations of the law and complete obstruction of oversight and the misuse of county funds to pursue his personal political agenda, his secret police unit, and politically motivated investigations intended to intimidate, harass oversight officials, the unchecked scourge of the deputy gang violence that he has actively enabled, and the dramatic increase in deputy shootings the recorded level of unnecessary deaths in jails under his watch. This goes beyond and deeper than Villanueva. Deputy gangs, for example, are a symptom of pervasive culture in LASD, and the lawlessness of secrecy and unbridled brutality. Villanueva is a product of this culture. Deputy gangs and other forms of deputy violence have persisted because of one sheriff's and other sheriffs' administration after the next has failed to enact and enforce policies that provide meaningful and consistent discipline when deputies harass, abuse, and kill. Among them, Sheriff Baca oversaw rampant extreme violence in the jails, much of it perpetrated by deputy gangs, and went to federal prison for obstructing civil rights intervention. Now Villanueva has gone from denying existence of deputy gangs to claiming that they are harmless fraternities and adopting meaningless policy, all while denying lawful subpoenas and violating laws on transparency and oversight. Villanueva disinterest in stemming deputy violence, including deputy gangs, is the most recent illustration of how existing county.
Include your time, Tamara.
Thank you.
Next, we'll have Brittany Roberts. If you can acknowledge the unmute request that was sent to you, you'll be up next. Brittany Roberts, please go ahead. You are unmuted, but I am not hearing you. I will send you a chat on the back end so we can see how to fix this. Next, Pastor Q, a request has been sent for you to unmute. Okay, please go ahead, Pastor Q.
Okay, thank you. I would just like to start by saying it seems like a full-time job when we have been working to hold the sheriff accountable since before this this commission was even put into place, right? And we've been at every meeting to make sure that there's some type of accountability. We have one sheriff in jail. We have one sheriff who served only one term, right? And the current sheriff who's opposing every subpoena and defying every accountability mechanism. We know that power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. But what we fail to mention is that the corrupt also seeks absolute power. And so when you have a sheriff who does not respect women, who attacks people in the community because he disagrees with them speaking up for their family members, we are elite. You said that we have the people elect our sheriffs. And one of the things that actually irks me in our society is the fact that we keep saying the public, the public, the public. But everyone in the public is not the same. And we have groups of people that actually weaponize as law enforcement. And when you have a sheriff that does not follow the law, he is actually a tool of those who weaponizes law enforcement. And when you do that, then you don't get rid of the white supremacists that are in the sheriff department and the gangs and all of that stuff, right? So we definitely need this amendment, and please vote to put it on the ballot.
Thank you. And next is MJ King. A request has been sent to unmute. If you can just acknowledge that. Okay, please go ahead, MJ.
Thank you, Ms. Ochoa, for your presentation today. And thank you, Commissioner Kennedy, for acknowledging that this is long overdue. Last year, LASD pocketed $44.9 million off of commissary fees, telephone tolls, vocational services, and barbershop visits charged to people in LA County jails. These profits come from low-income residents, including the 1 in 3 folks held in custody simply because they cannot afford bail. The revenue from these charges goes to the Inmate Welfare Fund, which California law requires is used to benefit the welfare of incarcerated people, not to line the pockets of LASD. LASD's Inmate Welfare Fund earns $15 million a year from telephone fees, despite the Board of Supervisors' motion to reduce or eliminate fees paid by incarcerated folks. LASD repeatedly claims staff shortages despite hiring or promoting 1,900 new employees under the county's hiring freeze. Record level in custody deaths highlighted at last month's meeting. Deputy gangs that terrorize the department and our communities. A family assistance program because LASD cannot stop killing our neighbors or terrorizing their family members after they steal the lives of their loved ones. A sheriff that ignores subpoenas and is insubordinate at best when he appears. Villanueva denies gangs exist within his department in one breath while ensuring that the deputies who participate in gangs have been terminated in the next. There's nothing left but for the commission to recommend the Board of Supervisors refer to voters a ballot measure that would amend the LA County Charter to maximize civilian oversight and common sense checks and balances over the sheriff and LASD. The safety of Angelenos depends on it. Thank you.
Thank you. And next is Ricci. If you can acknowledge the unmute request.
Hi, yes.
Please go ahead.
Yes, so this is Richie Serjanko from the People's City Council. I just want to urge the board to pass or push the Board of Supervisors for this charter amendment. Like many have mentioned, this is a systematic issue. Lee Baca went to jail. Alex Villanueva is engaged in multiple cover-ups. And so I don't think it is about the person or the individual. And I don't think it's about Villanueva's personality. I do think it's about the entire system, and how, if a sheriff believes that they're above the law, then they will do whatever they want and whatever they can, as proven by Alex Villanueva. For 4 years, essentially, he has acted with impunity and done whatever he wants. And now he's running for re-election. And I don't know if members of this commission have seen, but he's running a Facebook campaign advertisement against me. I'm a private citizen. I'm not running for office. And he is running a campaign against me. And his campaign has evolved into, a far right conservative ideology with its messaging and all of that. And that's just what I would see as a sign of what's to come. More fascistic, authoritarian behavior from Alex Villanueva. And this charter amendment isn't about Alex Villanueva. I would say that LASD has a systematic issue, and whoever is the head of LASD, once they get a taste of that power that can be unmatched and where you can do whatever you want without ever being held accountable, all sheriffs will act like this. So please push the board for this charter amendment. Thank you.
Thank you. And next is Rebecca Brown. If you can acknowledge the unmute. Okay, please go ahead, Rebecca.
Thank you. Yes, thank you, everyone. I'm excited to hear the COC finally take up this charter amendment. I think, as everyone said, Alex Villanueva, our current sheriff, is just a symptom of this department. These issues that we talk about every month when we come together at this meeting: deputy gangs, violence in the jails, violence against civilians, harassment of anyone who speaks out against the department, from county leadership to impacted families. These are not new. These did not just come up 4 years ago when Villanueva took office. These are issues that have been plaguing our county for decades and decades. And so it's this system that has allowed these problems to go unchecked and to just grow exponentially every year that set the stage for someone like Alex Villanueva to come in and just take everything to another level. Whether he's reelected, whether someone else steps into this position, these issues are not going away overnight. And it's honestly quite terrifying to think of, what could happen next. We keep thinking things are so bad. There's so much violence. There's so little regard for any type of oversight. How could it get worse? And we're continually stunned, like month after month, week after week, with a new level that things have gotten to. Nothing seems to change. We need to take drastic measures to, protect our community, to protect folks in Los Angeles, to allow, to tell the sheriff's department that, you work for us. You're here to protect and serve the community, not to harass, intimidate, and inflict violence upon the community. So I'm, really excited at the prospect of the COC recommending this to the Board of Supervisors, and I very much urge you to do so, urge you to listen to all of the public comment, and just consider the public comment not just on this issue, but that we've heard, every month about how the Sheriff's Department and how Alex Villanueva is inflicting harm on our communities, and we can step up and take action. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And next we will go back to Brittany. You should be unmuted now.
Hi, this is Pastor Bridie Roberts. Can you hear me now?
Please go ahead.
Okay, great. Like I said, my name is Pastor Bridie Roberts. I am the Deputy Director of Community Organizing at Unite Here Local 11, and I'd like to offer a statement from our union and our co-presidents. Esteemed members of the Civilian Oversight Commission, we write to you this morning as the 3 co-presidents of Unite Here Local 11. We are a labor union representing 32,000 members in the hospitality and tourism industry, comprising workers from many immigrant communities who are overwhelmingly Black, Latinx, or Asian American. On June 18, 2020, sheriff's deputies shot Andres Guadardo 5 times in the back, killing him while he was working at his part-time job as a security guard in Gardena. Andres had gotten the job to help provide for his family after his father, Cristobal, a Unite Here Local 11 member and cook at the LA Grand Hotel, was laid off due to COVID-19. As a union, we gathered around the grieving Guadardo family and began to organize to demand the resignation of Sheriff Alex Villanueva. We successfully unseated Sheriff Ochoa in Arizona in 2016, and so we know an abusive and unjust sheriff when we see one. In our original letter to say adios to Villanueva, we began, for decades, the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department has been rife with corruption, abuse of power, and impunity. Sheriff Villanueva has dramatically exacerbated its problems by undermining basic mechanisms of accountability and civilian oversight at every single turn. In our attempts to get justice for the Guadardo family, we have subsequently seen LASD officials refuse to cooperate with an independent investigation, stonewall the Inspector General. The deputy who shot Andres and 2 other LASD detectives involved refused to testify in the coroner's inquest into Guadardo's killing, the first of its kind in 30 years, stating they would invoke the Fifth Amendment. Sheriff Villanueva himself consistently refused to appear at the Civilian Oversight Commission meetings, even when lawfully subpoenaed to do so by the commission, as you know. In the last 23 months since the LASD killed Andres, we have learned that the existing mechanisms to bring long overdue and urgently needed accountability to the Sheriff's Department are simply too weak. As leaders in the labor movement, we know that an injury to one is an injury to all. The Sheriff's Department has never demonstrated a commitment or even understanding of this basic principle of justice. So we call today on the Commission to act now to recommend the Board of Supervisors refer to the voters a ballot measure that would amend the LA County Charter to maximize civilian oversight over the Sheriff and LASD, because we can no longer wait to hold the Sheriff accountable. This measure creates
we will hear from Shiming Cheer. If you could acknowledge, okay, please go ahead, Shiming. Shiming Cheer, did you want to make a comment? You were unmuted now.
Yes. Hello.
Okay, please go ahead.
Hi, this is Shiming Cheer from the California Immigrant Policy Center, and I urge the Commission to recommend that the Board of Supervisors refer to voters the LA County Charter Amendment for Sheriff Accountability. For far too long, the unchecked power of the sheriff has disproportionately harmed immigrants and communities of color. The Sheriff's Office holds political power, which allows them to sidestep most attempts at oversight or accountability. As the speakers have mentioned before me, having an election every 4 years is not a sufficient accountability mechanism when communities regularly bear the brunt of sheriff's violence and misconduct. Now is the time to really act to hold sheriffs accountable. What we need is significant systemic change, and creating meaningful checks and balances for the Sheriff's Office is long overdue. So what our communities really need is a charter amendment that will strengthen sheriff accountability and create a common sense checks and balances of the sheriff and the LA Sheriff's Department by establishing an impeachment process to allow removal of the sheriff for serious misconduct, reinforcing the board's policymaking authority over the Sheriff's Department, and establishing permanent and independent civilian oversight. Thank you.
Thank you. And next is Ricci, if you could acknowledge the request to be unmuted. Okay, please go ahead, Ricci.
I'm sorry, I missed what this was about. Sorry, I stepped away for a second.
The resolution on the charter amendment.
Oh yes, I support the charter amendment, and I hope the board can continue to push this forward, or hope the commission can push us forward with the board. That's all I have to say on it. Thank you.
Thank you. And next is Will Brown. Will, if you could acknowledge the request to be unmuted. Okay, and please go ahead.
Yes, hello, I'm William Brown. I served as 14 years as the general counsel of the 20,000 members of the Los Angeles County Bar Association. I just wanted to refine a point that's already been made a number of times. I think it's critically important as this commission brings this charter amendment to the public that it not be viewed as a reaction to the personality of the sheriff. Unfortunately, the media has built a huge story around the personality of the sheriff, and the sheriff uses that regularly to transform anything into a personal grudge match with him. My view in listening to what's gone on here is this charter amendment is a non-dramatic step to address a woeful inadequacy of checks and balances within the LA County government. It is not a drastic measure. It has been referred to as that in these comments. I think this commission needs to steer away strongly from the notion this is a dramatic measure taken in response to the sheriff. I think that's a complete wrong direction to head. LA County, from the history, having said that, the history shows that the sheriff has been unregulated problematically. And so it is time for this commission to really urge the supervisors to address what is a huge error in the operation, the structure, the governmental structure of LA County. It's simply a step to do something across time that needs to be done. Not dramatic, not in reaction to the sheriff. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And next is Michelle Infante. If you can acknowledge the request to be unmuted. Okay, please go ahead, Michelle.
Thank you. Support the charter amendment measure that allows the County Board of Supervisors to remove the sheriff violating the law and endangering our communities with excessive violence that kills. This isn't about personalities and getting rid of someone. This is about criminal acts that are being committed by a whole department, and we don't know everyone that's doing it. This is in regards to LASD writing false reports, and then those false reports that contain false narratives go to the coroner, and then the coroner writes false narratives, and then families have to hire attorneys, and they have to beg and ask people to listen to their stories because they don't believe what happened. There are things that are missing in there. Families, it's costing them mental anguish. We have laws for our community, but we don't have laws in place when we have a whole sheriff's department that's committing criminal acts against people in our community. An abuse of power for 172 years. 172 years. And 4 years ago, we had Tanaka and Baca, and now we have Alex Villanueva and Tanaka. It's crazy that these families have to continue to go through this, continue every day, wake up and see that the laws don't pertain to the people that are supposed to be upholding the law. Please vote for the county charter change to remove the sheriff. It impeaches someone who's committing criminal acts, and we don't have to wait another 4 years for time being spent like this being wasted when you can have something in place to remove a sheriff, put someone else in the interim, and eliminate people in the community from being killed and people being killed inside our county jails.
Thank you. And next is Carlos Montes. Carlos, if you can acknowledge the unmute request.
Yeah,
Okay,
good morning
please
or
go
good
ahead.
afternoon. This is Carlos Montes. I'm with Centro C Community Service Organization, and we do support a charter amendment. Our main demand is overall for community civilian control over the police, which is a demand from the 60s. So we urge COC to support the amendment to the county charter that will strengthen sheriff accountability and, create a common sense structure of checks and balances once and for all. You all should recommend to the Board of Supervisors that proposed to the voters a charter amendment that will be on the ballot, hopefully by November, to establish an impeachment process to allow for the removal of the sheriff for serious misconduct, which I would say violating the law, but also to reinforce the board's policy-making authority over the sheriff and establish a permanent independent civilian oversight. You all are Civilian Oversight Commission, but you have the power. You have a subpoena power. You don't have a lot of power. I'm a member of the Boyle Heights Neighborhood Council. We have advisory power, but we don't have any veto power and don't have any real power. What we need is to strengthen oversight and give power to the Civilian Oversight Commission, which I would call people power, power to the people. And this is a democratic movement. It's not about just removing Villanueva. It's about establishing a systemic process of accountability and democratic process. So thank you very much, and please vote for this motion to move forward with the charter amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Carlos. And next will be Andres, if you can acknowledge the unmute request that was sent to you. Okay, please go ahead, Andres.
Can you hear me?
We do.
All right. I don't have much more to say than what my colleague Melanie Ochoa testified to, but I couldn't agree more with the representative of the LA County Bar, I believe it was. This is not radical whatsoever. It's simply common sense. Checks and balances are actually vital pillars of a strong and functioning democracy, aimed at not allowing any one person or agency to become too powerful. And having said this, I want to read for the record excerpts of the op-ed by Miriam Krinsky and Erwin Chemerinsky. Quote, the Board of Supervisors responsible for the health and safety of the public needs greater mechanisms to rein in any sheriff who abuses power. It is long past time to amend the county charter to provide that authority. Any reform should at a minimum create a process to allow removal of the sheriff for serious misconduct by a supermajority vote of the board, reinforce the board's ability to guide policymaking in the sheriff's department, and establish permanent independent civilian oversight. If the amendment is approved by voters, it is possible that the sheriff or law enforcement unions may challenge it, especially the provisions allowing for removal of the sheriff by the board. But this authority is appropriate and in line with the text of the California Constitution, state statutes, and case law. Sheriffs have great power, and a sheriff abuses it has the potential to do tremendous harm. Neither elections every 4 years, nor the theoretical possibility of an expensive recall vote can produce timely accountability and correction when the power of the sheriff's office is abused. We also need strong, independent civilian oversight to be directly addressed in the county's charter so that it cannot be eroded by future political leaders. The oversight authority of the Office of Inspector General and the Civilian Oversight Commission should be memorialized in the county charter along with the subpoena authority and with resources to fulfill their functions. We don't need yet another study of Blue Ribbon Commission, nor can the supervisors wait for certain state reforms or another election cycle. Now is the time to act. Advance charter amendments that can strengthen the county structure of checks and balances. Let's not wait for more decades of reports that tell us what we already know.
Thank you. And next, Luis, a request has been sent to unmute you. If you can acknowledge that request. Luis, you're unmuted. Please go ahead.
Member of Central CSO. Yeah, I'm here to speak in support of the charter amendment. It's about time that we have at least the board supervisors, you guys, the COC, and the Inspector General, the Office of Inspector General, to finally investigate the sheriffs for any wrongdoing, criminal stuff, without any interruptions by the sheriff himself. It's not right that the sheriffs gets to stop any type of process on the investigation against them with just a whim of their own authority. That type of authority needs to be taken away from them in order for actual checks and balances to be pushed forward, because it's ridiculous that a rogue sheriff like Villanueva could stop anything like this in light of all the deputy gangs and all the corruption that's going on in the department. So yeah, I do wholeheartedly speak in favor of the charter amendment. I hope you push the board supervisors to push this charter amendment too. Thank you.
Thank you. And the last person signed up is Leticia. I've sent a request to unmute you. If you can acknowledge that, Leticia. Okay, please go ahead. Leticia, please go ahead. We hear you now.
Okay, thank you. Hi, my name is Leticia Vasquez, and I'm the mother of
Marco Antonio Vasquez Jr., who was murdered on October 6, 2019. And I am in favor of the charter amendment, not because it's Villanueva, but because a sheriff should not have that much power. If we can recall, if we can impeach a president, a governor, etc., there's no reason why we shouldn't have the authority and the power to do that with a sheriff, especially when his conduct is far to be desired of a reputable man. He obviously tries to do things his own way. Just the other day, he put out a commercial using the church, the archdiocese, announced that he had no authority to do that. So he obviously does what he wants. He also tried to build a helipad near his house so that he can fly away when he feels that he's in danger. He had no authority to do that. Southern California Gas Company also said he did not have the right to do that. He does a lot of things that he shouldn't be doing. And he even laughs in our face at these meetings, doesn't show up, doesn't pay attention to the subpoenas, does not follow the law as he should. He continues to harass our families, continues to use the Vargas family and the Rea family as examples of them not being harassed, which we know they are. So are we. There's a lot of things that he does that are wrong, and no sheriff should have that much power to continue to do that. He complains he doesn't have money, yet we're paying so much money in overtime. He should hire more sheriffs if he doesn't have enough. But why is he paying almost double the amount of their salary in overtime? There's a lot of things that he needs to be checked for, especially his wrongdoings. So he should be out, and we should have the power to get him out of office if
And next,
his position. Thank you.
and next, Sol. I've sent a request for you to be unmuted. Next up, we'll do Stephanie Luna after Sol, and that will be our last public comment on the resolution. So Sol, please go ahead.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sol Marquez, and I am a member of the Chicano-led organization out of East LA and Boyle Heights, Centro CSO. I'm speaking in favor of the charter amendment, and I'm very happy to see it on the agenda today. The charter amendment would give you all, the Civilian Oversight Commission, more power over the LA sheriffs and including Sheriff Villanueva. Since Villanueva took power, he has become the face of deputy gangs and a national scandal to a very common issue, the unpunished killings by killer cops and sheriffs. His deputies have been able to stalk, harass, and even kidnap surviving family members of the people they kill. This has been done to the families of Paul Rea and Anthony Vargas, families from East Los Angeles. Much like what has been done in Chicago, our mission is to take power over the deputies who currently go unpunished after they kill us. No matter who wins the sheriff election, this amendment would ensure that more checks and balances are placed on deputies and the new sheriff. Long-standing gangs within LA County Sheriff's Department total to at least 18 deputy gangs. Enough is enough. It's time to boot the bandito. We hope that you all will join us in supporting the amendment and that you all recommend that the Board of Supervisors also be in favor. The BOS holds the power to place this on a November ballot, and that would give the LA public the ability to vote in favor of it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. And the last public comment will come from Stephanie Luna. A request has been sent for you to unmute. Please go ahead, Stephanie.
And no matter what, we're never going to get him back. My family was brutalized when Anthony was murdered that night, and every day after that by this sheriff's department. I have a son, nephews, nieces, cousins, my mom, my sisters that this amendment will help protect. The murder of my nephew has created a generational trauma, and that trauma is going to continue with whoever gets put into Villanueva's seat. This charter amendment is not just about Villanueva. It's about holding the entire department accountable and everything to do with us being capable of protecting our families and community from the abuse these departments are capable of continuing to inflict. This is nothing radical, and we're not asking for anything crazy or far-fetched. We're simply asking that the voters be capable of giving the Board of Supervisors the power to hold the Sheriff's Department accountable. And once again, not just Villanueva now, but also any sheriff that is to come after him. I really do hope that this commission recommends to the Board of Supervisors this ballot measure to amend the county charter, because it's time for us to show that no sheriff is above the law. Thank you.
Thank you. And we do have one last public comment from Julie Martinez. A request has been sent for you to unmute, Julie. Please go ahead. Julie, you are unmuted. Please go ahead with your comment. We do not hear you, Julie. So Chair Kennedy, that does conclude all of the public comments regarding the resolution.
Thank you so much. Having heard from the commissioners and the public, I think it's time for us to take a vote on the resolution with the amendment suggested by Lael. Yes, Lael.
I know that there was an inquiry as to the language of the amendment as urged by Melanie Ochoa, with some assistance from a number of people. I have drafted something which I obviously can't put up, but the language would be, and again, it would be at the near the top of page 2 of the resolution, which you all have as the last, essentially, whereas clause. And the language would read, be it further resolved that the Board of Supervisors be authorized to oversee and set policies for LASD, provided they do not interfere with the statutory authority of the sheriff or otherwise conflict with state law, comma, and create a mandatory process for the COC to recommend policies for LASD and for the board to deliberate on these policies, comma, proceed with any actions necessary and approve final policies.
Thank you, Lael, for giving us specific language for the amendment. Rob?
Yeah, let me just say, I don't think that goes far enough. I would request that the chair with the executive director and staff consider revising the proposed charter amendment to empower the Civilian Oversight Commission to be more than an advisory body to the sheriff and the Board of Supervisors, but to have policy setting authority comparable to that of the LA Police Commission. Just one example, but it's important that I make it, the need for us to be more than advisory, finally. And that is, over a year ago, this commission proposed a policy change that would prohibit joining and participating in deputy cliques and gangs. That was advisory only. And we are here today with that policy not being adopted. And so we need to have policy making authority in this commission if we're going to have a real commission with real teeth. So I would like, rather than amending with another whereas clause, I would like to suggest that the chair with the executive director revise the draft to include empowerment of this commission with policy making authority and present that to the commission at the next meeting. And with that, I think we could go ahead and vote on the resolution as is currently worded, but with a view toward perhaps at our next meeting, adopting a further refinement to it that would make us more than simply an advisory body that proposes or recommends reforms to the sheriff or sheriff's department or to the Board of Supervisors that don't get acted on. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Lael.
Yes, while that may be a good idea, I think the fact is we've had this request. We've known about the urging to the board that they place an ordinance on the ballot. I believe that this is going to be presented to the board next week. I believe it is appropriate that we act now and perhaps make suggestions to the board before it ultimately places this on the ballot at the end of July. But I don't think we can wait until June to redraft something and then have further discussions.
Okay, I think that the resolution as amended, where there was a motion and it was seconded, so I want to take that to a vote. Rob, I completely agree with you. And actually, your proposal to me seems important enough to be a freestanding resolution. And I am offering, as you recommend, to work with Brian and you or anyone else to put forward that recommendation, because the current system is not working. And I agree with you. But I'm going to let this one go forward. So can we take a vote?
Well, when you say you'll let this one go forward, what are you referring to? The resolution as provided to us in the packet, plus the proposed amendment from Lael? Is that what you're talking about?
Yes, because I believe that was what the motion was and was seconded.
Okay. Then I go ahead and take roll for the vote. Commissioner Bonner?
Thank you.
I have to vote no because I can't agree with the proposed amendment to the resolution.
Noted. Commissioner Cooper?
I'm for it.
Thank you. Commissioner Garcia?
Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Hagans, is she still with us? I don't think so. Commissioner Harris?
I really want to vote for this, but I'm very uncomfortable with voting for an amendment that's pretty broad and we don't have in front of us to read. So I'm going to echo Commissioner Bonner's no vote.
Thank you. Commissioner Hicks?
Yes.
Thank you. Chair Kennedy?
Yes.
Thank you. And Commissioner Rubin?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes with 5 in favor, 2 nay.
Just is Commissioner Giggins, did she have to leave?
Yes. Commissioner Giggins told me she had to leave at 11 o'clock. She expressed support for the resolution, but she's not here to vote.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. The last item on the agenda is public comments. We've had extensive public comments about the topics, but we end with general public comments on any matters within the commission's purview. Do we have any?
Right now, we've just had one person raise their hand for public comment. So as a reminder, if you would like to make general public comment, please raise your hand now. If you have called in on the phone, please press *3 to get in line. And before we hear from MJ King, will be our first speaker, we will have an announcement in Spanish.
Buenas tardes. Can you hear me?
We do hear you.
Okay. Buenas tardes. Si necesita traducción a sus comentarios de español a inglés, simplemente diga la palabra inglés y alguien le dirá cómo, español y alguien le dirá cómo comenzar. Gracias.
MJ, a request has been sent for you to be unmuted. If you can acknowledge that. Okay, please go ahead. You have 2 minutes on the clock.
Oh, thank you. I was unable to give comment when agenda item 3C was called earlier, so I just wanted to uplift your dedication to offer assistance to families whose loved ones were stolen from them by LASD. And I'd just like to remind you that in 2021, 55 people died in custody and LASD fatally shot 11 more. So the current OIG proposal doesn't sufficiently account for the funds needed for burial costs. I think the budget needs to account for 70 burials for 2022. And since the OIG report also noted that money for certain burial services ran out sometime in 2021, I think the COC should ask for funds to cover all eligible expenses for families who needed support in 2021. You know, I really feel disgusting talking about my neighbors as numbers. Let's not lose sight that these are valuable community members that had their entire lives ahead of them, and we should do everything in our power to prevent the LASD from stealing one more community member from us. Much love and strength to the family members who have to relive their loss every time they speak out. Thanks for your time.
And next is Carlos Montes. If you can acknowledge the unmute request. Okay, please go ahead, Carlos. You have 2 minutes on the clock.
Yeah, thank you very much. Carlos Monte, Centro CSO Community Service Organization. We've been fighting on this issue of police abuse since late 40s when Ed Roy Ball was abused by LEPD and took on a campaign. One of the things I wanted to point out that in the 90s, we had the whole LA County hearings of the Coast Commission. I know some of you may remember, maybe as old as I am, but for you young folks, we've been through this before. We had the abuse of the Vikings gangs in Linwood. They were killing people, actually assassinating people, right? We had a whole hearing. Coast Commission, Irma Molina invited us all to come out and give testimony. And a lot of reforms came out of that, some of them good, you know, and some of them weren't implemented. One of the things that came out was community advisory boards of each police station, because we kept again pushing for community, civilian, democratic control over the police, over the sheriff's station. So we got these advisory boards, and we proposed that they be elected people that have people from the actual community. But what ended up happening is they're just appointed by the captain of each station, which I think is very undemocratic. So I want to point out again that, you know, we support the charter amendment. We support the Civilian Oversight Commission have more oversight, more power. I thought the motion was, you know, Mr. Bonner, I support what you said. We want more stronger power oversight for the COC. So maybe I didn't read the whole motion specifically correctly, but I thought it included a more power to the COC. Civilian oversight over the sheriff has to be strengthened, has to be stronger, power to the people. That's a democratic process. So, you know, we got to keep pushing for systemic change. And I think this is an opportunity to do it. So thank you very much for your work and your time.
Thank you. And next is Tiffany Tavares. A request has been sent for you to unmute, Tiffany. Okay, please go ahead. Tiffany, we hear you. If you could make your public comment. Tiffany, did you want to make a public comment, a general public comment?
Can you hear me?
We do.
Okay. So did you hear what I was saying already?
We did not.
Okay.
Please begin.
I am the mother of Dylan Tavares. He was a young man killed by the Huntington Beach Police Department in Orange County. And I just want to say thank you for the people that have spoken, people that are part of this commission, for continuing to deal with this problem. It is not a county-wide problem. It is not only the sheriffs. It's not only the police departments. It's systemic in our entire country, and we just have to keep chipping away at it. It breaks down to DAs that don't charge and officers that hide things for each other. And I know I am very much preaching to the council, or to the choir here. I can't say, it's so hard to keep going to these meetings. And I'm actually in school right now to get my master's degree in public administration so I can understand all these processes and help to stop this from happening. And I can't, just one of the things that I want to say is there's so many commissions and there's so many boards. If you have the opportunity to not table something, to drill down into it in that hour and to get it passed, just to keep things moving, you're on the right side of history. And I know there's small groups of people making noise right now, but this will all be documented. At some point, this will change, because this is not what our country is built on. We have a government, an entire government system that can kill people in the streets without any checks or balances, and that's not the way it's supposed to be. Thank you for everything you're doing to try to change that.
Thank you, Tiffany. And does that conclude your comments?
Yes.
We will hear from Julie Martinez. A request has been sent for you to unmute, Julie.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, but it sounds like you have another speaker in the background. If you can mute that.
Okay, can you hear me?
Oh, still hearing additional. So if you have a phone or a computer that is also broadcasting the meeting, please mute that. Turn the speaker off and try again now. Okay, Julie, we are not hearing you anymore. We will come back to you, Julie. And next we'll go with Will Brown. A request has been sent to you, Will. Please go ahead with your comment.
Yes, William Brown again. I just wanted to make one comment about the two investigations that are happening that were mentioned before from the Inspector General's office, and I believe the other one was the City Attorney's office. And I would just comment that as a member of the public that has watched government investigations be ineffective, be slow, be cautious, even reluctant, this is on the national level. We in the public are really concerned that investigations are not coordinated, are not sharing data and information. And so I would really urge this commission to ensure that those investigations are in fact coordinated, sharing data, and that they have a relationship of some kind to the public, to let the public know what's going on and to let the public know what stage they're at, etc. Thank you.
Thank you. And next with Leticia, a request has been sent to you, Leticia, to be unmuted.
Hi, can you hear me?
We can. Please go ahead.
Okay, I just wanted to reach out to Tiffany just to let her know that I can feel her pain. I can feel the shaking in her voice, one mom to another. Just like I see the pain of many mothers that are out there fighting the same fight for justice in this long, treacherous, painful road that we are now on involuntarily. So I ask the board and everyone that can make a difference to please listen to our voice, to please listen to our communities and the cry for help. We are desperate. We are desperate because we continue to see this man toy with everything that he has and continues to get away with so much. And she's right. It's not just from the sheriffs, it's from the bottom up. Everywhere there is corruption. When you see these white supremacists shooting people and walking out clean without a scratch, not being taken down like they did our loved ones, it really, really hurts. Not that I want them to be killed, but there was no reason to kill mine. There was no reason to kill all of our kids, all of our brothers, all of our sisters, all of our husbands. I have my grandchildren fatherless. I have Christina fighting every day, trying to make a difference, trying to make it right for the kids. I see moms, and all we got to do is look at each other and know how much this pain eats us up alive. And to see this corrupt system continue to get away with it is not fair. We need justice and we need change. We need a change that's going to make a difference in all levels, and especially the sheriffs right now, because that's what is holding us down and keeping us in pain and suffering. We need to see change, and we need to see justice prevail so that our fight shows that it is possible to win when a system is corrupt. Thank you. I yield the rest of my time.
And Pastor Q, we have sent a request to unmute you. Please go ahead, Pastor Q.
Yes, I would like to definitely commend the commission for your vote. I think it was the right thing to do to move it forward so that we can proceed. But I also want to lift up Commissioner Bonnet's resolution. I believe it's very important to strengthen the COC and the powers. So I think moving forward, hopefully you guys will work with the Board of Supervisors to make sure that that can be included to make the resolution or the charter amendment actually strengthen it. So thank you for that, and I yield the rest of my time. God bless you.
Thank you. And next we will try Julie Martinez. Julie, we've sent the. Please go ahead. Julie, we do not hear you. It looks like you're unmuted on our end, though. Okay, we'll come back to you, Julie. Tamra will be the second to last public comment. So Tamra, a request has been sent. Please go ahead. Tamra, you're unmuted. We do not hear you though, Tamra.
Can you unmute me?
You are unmuted. Please go ahead.
Okay. Thank you for the vote. I do agree that we need to broaden and strengthen the civilian oversight power, and I think enacting, you know, your all's involvement in policy making is important. I can't remember which commissioner mentioned that. I apologize, but I think that is very valid. In addition, again, I want to urge every member of this commission to tell your friends and family and any people, the public you have an outreach on, to support the People's Budget LA. Go to the peoplesbudgetla.com. This is a moral document drafted by Black and Brown community members, where the money needs to go. And why is this important? Because the law enforcement gets way too much of our money, which gives them way too much power. Families are suffering. This is, this needs to end now. This isn't something we can wait on. So every member of this board needs to support the peoplesbudgetla.com, which is a moral document, right? Go to peopleslabudget.com, take the survey, and have every member of your community supporting this budget. And in addition, support Gina Viola, who is pushing the People's Budget LA. These are for policies, for resources for our community, for housing and mental health services. And when the people have resources, right, we need to defund the sheriff's department. They need to be defunded. We need to abolish the sheriff and defund them. Thank you.
Thank you, Tamara. And we'll try one last time with Julie. A request has been sent to unmute you, and this will be the last public comment. Julie, it looks like you were unmuted. Can you try now? I apologize, Julie. We are still not hearing you. So Chair Kennedy, it does look like, okay, Christina Vasquez, I see you just raised your hand. I'm sending you a request to be unmuted if you can acknowledge that. Okay, please go ahead, Christina.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we do now, Christina. Please go ahead.
I just wanted to comment on something that had been said in regards to if there was a pushback in regards to the charter amendment, would we want to continue fighting if it was 5 or 6 years? But as history has shown us, there have been people that have been paving the way to make changes throughout our history, and they faced many oppositions and they never quit. They kept going, and at times even if it cost them their lives. So this is not something that we're choosing to do because we don't like one person. This has something way more to do than that. And I appreciate how Melanie broke it down in stating it's because we would hold them accountable if they're violating all these laws that they claimed that they were going to stand up and fight for. They should be held to a higher status and a higher account if they're holding that position. And that is what this charter amendment is for. And we fight the way we do because we know what it's like. We are the impacted families left behind with the trauma, with the pain, and we're trying to have this change happen so that it doesn't happen to our future generations, to our own children, to our grandchildren, to our neighbors, to other people. We don't want people to know what we've been through. This is why we fight. So if it takes 5, 10, 15 years, we're not going to stop. Nothing is going to stop us because things need to change. And that's why we come on every month, hoping that you guys will hear us, hoping that it will move you to actually do something for us. Thank you. I yield the rest of my time.
And I'm just checking to see if we were able to get Julie on.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes, we do. Please go ahead.
Okay, apologies for the earlier tech problem. Thank you for this opportunity. I was not able to speak on the charter amendment, so at this point, it would be appropriate to say thank you to those of you who did vote yes. For those of you who didn't on a technical issue, you need to understand that we, the community of LA County, do not trust Villanueva. We don't trust his deputy gangs, nor his rogue sheriff. To the new commissioners who believe that trust between LASD and the community must be developed, you must know that until a true charter amendment is passed by the Board of Supervisors, that the LASD and the community that trust between LAS and the community can never be achieved, because we as a community understand that there are real, because we as a community must understand that there are real consequences for the sheriff's behavior. The charter amendment will provide such assurances. As it stands, we the people have witnessed the dangerous sheriff's behavior. We have witnessed him wield his power. He ignores the COC, he mocks the COC. He ignores the Board of Supervisors and mocks them as well publicly. He ignores the FBI and also mocks them. He ignores our California Attorney General Bonta, and he continues to act with impunity. He unfortunately uses press conferences like a third world dictator, where he regularly identifies journalists. He identifies the OIG, he identifies family members. And what's very dangerous about that, this doxing becomes a very dangerous policy. For those who follow Villanueva on social media, we have noticed the growth of white supremacist fans, and some of his fans pledged their support for the January 6th Capitol insurrection. Again, we are at a tipping point. Villanueva is dangerous to our communities. So thank you for agreeing to pass this resolution to send it to the Board of Supervisors in order to pass a charter amendment. Thank you.
Thank you. And Chair Kennedy, that does conclude all of our public comment for general public comment.
Thank you. Well, it doesn't happen very often, but I think we're going to conclude 15 minutes early. I'm sorry, I see Rob has his hand up. Rob,
it looks like you're muted.
Excuse me, yeah, I was muted. I have a question for the chair and the executive director with respect to the enforcement of the Oversight Commission subpoenas. I don't know about the others here, but I was shocked by the report of County Council that the subpoenas that this commission served on the sheriff, Villanueva, last fall, one of which was for him to appear and testify on deputy gangs / cliques, hasn't been enforced, won't even be heard by the Superior Court until late October of this year, which is 5 months from now. I'm sorry, but that's not acceptable. That is not acceptable. I have two questions for you, Mr. Chair, and that is, one, who in the Oversight Commission is briefed and consulted regarding enforcement of our subpoenas, our commission subpoenas to the sheriff to appear and testify? Who's consulting with us on this? We're the client. And secondly, how do we as the client get input to County Council on the urgency of our subpoenas and their enforcement? So I don't know. Is that the executive director? Is it you as chair? But we need to be part of this process, because it's not acceptable that it's going to be late October before our subpoenas are heard and enforced by the court.
No, I definitely am not being consulted because I expressed the same dismay that you just expressed in real time when I heard that it was going to be a year for it to go to court. I asked whether we had agreed to that kind of delay, and I was told we did not. But my answer is I don't think our lawyers treat us like the client. I think the county council, um, well, I'll let them address that themselves. But Brian, are you being consulted about the timeframes for it? Because, you know, Commissioner Bonner is spot on in his comment.
No, we get an update on occasion from county council on the status of the subpoenas, but I would really defer to county council as to the schedule and what we can do in the future to improve that for subpoenas and any other subpoenas that may be.
Alex, do you want to address the comment? As Rob just said, you know, we have a lawyer representing us on our subpoenas, and it doesn't sound like there's a lot of opportunity for us to weigh in what we think is right, because I suspect most members, if not all members of the commission, are surprised to hear it takes a year to get a court hearing on enforcement of a subpoena on a matter that is so important to public policy.
Yes, Chair Kennedy. First of all, I would just like to say that the petition to enforce the subpoena was filed at the beginning of the year, so it was a pretty quick turnaround. We would be happy to meet with members of the commission to discuss status and send out status updates as often as you would see fit. Unfortunately, the Superior Court is very backed up, and there aren't a lot of hearing dates. Just as an example, the case management conference in this matter was not even set until 4 months after the petition was filed, and that was in May. So, you know, we're doing our best to move this along as quickly as possible, but, you know, the court has a full calendar and we're doing our best to work around that. But in terms of updates, we'd be happy to meet with various commissioners to provide updates.
Well, Rob, what do you think about the ad hoc committee on subpoenas meeting with the county council?
It's either the chair of the commission or the ad hoc committee, and I'm happy to do that. And it's not just meeting. I don't want to have meetings to meet. First of all, we're not approving any further continuances. If you're suggesting any further continuances of any of our subpoenas, I insist that county council request through the Oversight Commission, the ad hoc committee on subpoenas, or the chair that matters be continued, because it's not acceptable to us. And I don't know who the Superior Court judge here is, but I think that you know, I think there are ways of making petitions to accelerate hearings on motions of matters that are of extreme public importance, which this is. We're right in the middle of investigation right now being conducted by pro bono counsel on behalf of the commission on this very subject. And you're telling me we're not even going to have a hearing until the end of October. That's just, you know, we need to complete our investigation. Part of completing our investigation is apparently having to compel Sheriff Villanueva to appear and testify on the issue of deputy gangs, cliques, and exclusionary subgroups. So I'll undertake that role, and I do expect to be briefed as a client of county council on behalf of this full commission, not just somebody being briefed on the status, but get our view. We're entitled to have our views heard as client, since we issue these subpoenas under our authority, under the commission's authority, granted to it, among other things, by Measure R, by the voters of the county. So if that's acceptable to county council, I'd like to have a briefing, certainly, of the, and I'll invite the rest of the other members of the ad hoc committee regarding subpoenas. But I'd like to have a briefing certainly by next week.
I think that's a great idea for us to meet. Brian, maybe you can work with Alex for us to get that, because Rob's point is well taken. I was surprised to hear the time frame myself when it was announced. We're gonna end this meeting.
I was going to say, we'll work on that. We'd like to get a handle on all of the subpoenas that are being issued.
And it really is a recurring problem, Brian, like who's the client? And so we're going to conclude this meeting a little early, 10 minutes early. I want to call attention to the fact that the COC is hosting a special hearing on deputy gangs next Tuesday, 524 from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. at Loyola Law School, with the goal of beginning the process of getting to the bottom of the issue of deputy gangs that has plagued the department for so long. And then we're going to have our regular public hearing on Thursday, June 16th at 9 a.m. Brian, is that still a virtual meeting?
At this point, yes, we're still working on venues.
Okay. So I want to thank all the commissioners for participating in the process, especially our two new commissioners, Irma and Luis. It was quite a first day. We're thrilled to have you, and we'll see everybody either next Tuesday or on June 16th. I want to thank our staff for making this virtual meeting happen. You do it seamlessly despite all the technical difficulties, and we really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you all. Bye-bye.
Bye,
Thank you.
everyone.